I've lived on the same street in Henderson, Nevada for the past 11 years. It's one of those places where nothing really happens. Just row after row of sun-bleached houses, cracked sidewalks, and the occasional block party when someone's kid graduates high school. I work nights as a security guard, so I usually sleep through the daytime drama. Still, I remember the day everything changed like it was carved into my bones. 3 doors down from me lived a guy named Craig. He kept to himself. Always looked greasy, like he worked with oil in his sleep, and he rarely spoke unless you caught him near his garage and forced a conversation. People around here called him the wrench guy. He ran a makeshift auto shop out of his house. No sign, no name, no business hours. But everyone knew Craig could fix your car for cheap. I took my old Honda Civic to him once when it was leaking something nasty, and he patched it up without asking for a dime. Just waved me off with an absent grunt. He had this hollow look in his eyes, like sleep was something other people got, and he'd say weird things under his breath while he worked. Things like, "The world's too noisy." He lived alone. His wife had left him years ago. I only knew that because Tammy, my neighbor across the street, has a way of dropping other people's private tragedies into conversation, like she's giving you a weather report. Apparently, the wife just vanished one morning. No moving truck, no tearful goodbyes. She was just gone. Tammy said, divorce wasn't pretty. She left him cold, just up and disappeared. Some folks joked, half laughing, half not, that Craig had locked her in the basement or buried her under the garage. But no one ever said it like they really wanted an answer. About 3 months before things got weird, the HOA finally clamped down on Craig's operation. They'd been gunning for him for years, but someone, I'm guessing the guy with the new Tesla, filed a formal complaint about the fumes and the noise. One morning, there was a laminated letter duct-taped to Craig's rusted chain-link fence. Immediate cease of operation. In bold red letters. I passed by the next day and saw him sitting in a lawn chair in his driveway, just staring at the closed garage door. Not moving, not even blinking. He looked like a man watching his house burn from the inside out. That was the last time I saw him in daylight. After that, the garage door stayed shut. No more engine revs, no more scattered parts in the yard. Just silence. And not the peaceful kind. It was the kind of silence that felt wrong, like something was being held in. A few weeks passed. People moved on. Craig had always been background noise in our little suburban life. But then, one morning, right before my shift, I stepped outside and stopped cold. There was a smell in the air. Not smoke, not gas. Something harsher. It hit the back of your throat like burning plastic mixed with nail polish remover. Chemical, artificial, wrong. I wasn't the only one who noticed. Neighbors were standing in their yards sniffing the air, exchanging uneasy glances. That's when I heard it. The sound. It was faint. You had to really focus to hear it. A low, steady humming, like a refrigerator running, but heavier. Almost rhythmic, like it had a pulse. It was coming from Craig's house. Tammy was already on her phone. That's when I knew it wasn't nothing. Tammy only calls for 2 reasons: neighborhood gossip or emergencies. By the time I left for work around 7 p.m., 2 fire trucks and a police SUV had parked in front of Craig's place. I slowed my car near the end of the block to watch. They hadn't gone inside yet. There was yellow caution tape going up, and one of the firefighters had a hazmat mask hanging from his neck. That was my first real clue that this wasn't a wiring issue or a kitchen fire. That humming. It was louder now. Heavy. It wasn't just a sound anymore, it had weight, like it was pressing into your chest. I remember putting my hand to the steering wheel and feeling it vibrate under my fingers. A few neighbors had their phones out, filming from a distance, but no one got close. Nobody wanted to. I drove off, not knowing that would be the last time anyone ever saw Craig. At work, I couldn't concentrate. I kept refreshing the local news on my phone, hoping for some update, but there was nothing. Just a short blurb. Possible chemical hazard under investigation in Henderson residential area. That was it. Around midnight, I finally got a text from Tammy. Just one sentence. They broke down the garage door. No details, no follow-up. Just that. I texted Tammy back asking what they'd found, but she didn't reply, not until the next morning. When I got home, the entire street was locked down. Fire department vans, unmarked black trucks, even a bomb squad vehicle blocking both ends of the block. I had to park 3 streets over and walk the rest of the way. My heart was hammering. Something was seriously wrong. Later that day, everything came out. Apparently, Craig had been building some kind of detonation system inside his house. Not just a homemade explosive in a basement kind of thing. This was complex, connected to multiple gas lines running up and down the entire street. It wasn't just dangerous, it was devastating. They said if it had gone off the way he planned, half the neighborhood would have been obliterated. But it didn't. The ignition system failed. Some jerry-rigged timing mechanism jammed at the last second. Dumb luck or divine intervention? Take your pick. That afternoon, I stood on my porch with a few other neighbors, all of us in stunned silence, watching as a man in a black jacket wheeled out what looked like a half-melted machine on a gurney. Wires everywhere, scorched metal. The thing looked like it had been part of a movie set. I stepped forward and asked one of the officers quietly, "Did you find Craig?" The guy didn't even look at me, just shook his head and muttered, "We haven't located the homeowner yet." That part still keeps me up sometimes. Craig's car was there. His front door was locked from the inside. No broken windows, no sign of forced entry or exit. No blood, no body, no note. Just that machine, a bunch of tangled wires, and a house filled with tools and chemical drums. It was like he'd disappeared in the middle of setting it all up. Some people think he fled before the authorities arrived, but how? I live 3 houses down. If he slipped out, I would have seen or heard something. Others think he planned to go out with the explosion, that it was a suicide mission, but he lost his nerve at the last second. Me? I'm not so sure he ever planned to leave that garage. I think something happened in there, something that made him stop or vanish. For weeks after that, our street felt wrong. Not in the supernatural way. It was real, physical, like the air itself was heavier. Sleep didn't come easy. The silence at night didn't feel restful. It felt loaded. The city sealed off Craig's house, metal panels over the windows and doors, the garage gutted, completely emptied. Rumor was that inside they found the insulation ripped from the walls, electrical wiring yanked out, sheetrock stripped to the studs, and notes, dozens of them, taped everywhere, handwritten, scrawled in pen and marker, illegible in parts. Tammy said they looked like someone trying to map something out. Others said Craig was convinced someone was watching him through the power lines, that he thought the grid was alive. Some claimed he was building a signal jammer to block voices only he could hear. It sounded insane, but no one could deny how deliberate everything had been. This wasn't the ramblings of a man falling apart. It was a plan, a blueprint, and it almost worked. 2 weeks later, I was out walking my dog late at night. I don't know why I passed Craig's place. Curiosity, I guess. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that nothing was left, that it was just a house again. The metal panels were still up. The streetlight in front flickered, casting long, jerky shadows across the pavement. Then my dog froze, ears up, hackles raised, low growl rumbling in her throat. That's when I heard it, that sound, that same low humming vibration from before. Fainter this time, but still there. So quiet you'd think it was your imagination, unless you'd heard it before. And I had. I stood there, not moving, barely breathing. It was lower than before, deeper. Like it wasn't coming from the house anymore, but beneath it. Like it had sunk into the foundation, into the earth. I tugged the leash hard and walked away fast. My skin crawled the entire way home. I didn't sleep that night. Eventually, the city brought in engineers to clear the place out entirely. The official explanation was residual electrical interference from old equipment, a plausible enough story. But no one explained why Craig was never found. No surveillance footage of him leaving, his bank account untouched, no phone activity, no credit card usage, no fingerprints anywhere unusual. Just gone, like he dissolved into the concrete. Some families moved out not long after. The rest of us just stopped talking about it. Like if we ignored it long enough, the street would go back to normal. Like silence could smother the unease. But not for me. I still think about it. Every night when I drive past that house. The lawn's overgrown now. The panels are still up. And sometimes people say they hear it. That hum. Just for a second. A vibration at the edge of hearing. Like something breathing under the floor. Last week, a real estate company finally listed the property online. Didn't mention a thing about what happened. Just called it a great fixer-upper opportunity with a spacious garage, perfect for creative projects. I stared at the listing for a long time. I don't believe in ghosts, or demons, or monsters in closets, but I believe in obsession, in ideas that sink their claws into a person and don't let go. And something tells me that house isn't done yet. Whatever Craig was building, or trying to stop, is still in there, humming softly beneath the concrete, waiting, watching. And the scariest part? I don't think we'll ever find out what it really was, but someone will, and when they do, it won't end well. I moved into that condo last fall, a 2-bedroom just outside Phoenix. I was 36, recently divorced, and trying to piece my life back together without draining the last of my savings. The building was older, built in the late 80s, I think. You could hear everything through the walls. Coughs, toilets flushing, dogs barking. I figured that was just the trade-off for cheap rent in a decent neighborhood. I didn't know many of my neighbors. People mostly kept to themselves. The guy next door barely even made eye contact. I only heard his name once, Josh, I think, when the landlord mentioned him in passing. He was tall, maybe mid-30s, usually wore a baseball cap. That was all I really knew about him. From the first week, though, I started hearing strange noises coming from his side of the wall. At first, I thought it was just the old plumbing, muffled bangs, maybe pipes clanking. Sometimes there was this dragging sound, like furniture being scraped across the floor, and every now and then what sounded like someone crying. But I kept brushing it off. Maybe it was just a TV playing late, or someone dealing with a breakup. This building creaked constantly at night. It was easy to rationalize things when all you wanted was some sleep and peace of mind. I even remember one night, I paused my show, muted the volume just to listen. But the sound stopped. I think I actually laughed at myself. It's strange how good we get at convincing ourselves everything's normal when we need it to be. Then came the night I couldn't ignore it. It was around 10:30 p.m. I was on the couch, scrolling through my phone when I heard a loud thump, sharp, sudden. Not like something fell. It sounded like an impact. A body hitting the wall. Then nothing. Just silence. I sat there, frozen, staring at the wall. Maybe a minute passed, and then I heard it. A woman's voice yelling, not crying, not muffled, screaming. "Please help me, somebody help." It was so loud it cut right through the drywall. My chest clenched. For a second I didn't move. My brain struggled to catch up with what I'd just heard. Then I shot up, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911 with shaking hands. I barely remember what I told them, just that someone was in danger next door, that I'd heard a woman screaming for help. When the cops arrived, I met them in the hallway, still in my sweatpants, heart hammering in my chest. I repeated what I'd heard. They knocked. No response. One of them tried the door. Locked. He radioed for backup, while the other started calling the building's maintenance line, hoping someone could come unlock it. From inside, I could hear movement. Something shifting. I said again. She was screaming. She said someone help her. One of the officers just muttered, "Screw it," and started kicking the door. It took 3, maybe 4 solid hits before it flew open. And the sound that came from inside, I'll never forget it. It wasn't screaming. It wasn't chaos. It was the absence of all that. Just silence. The kind that makes your skin crawl. Boots shuffled on the floor. One officer called out, "Ma'am, are you okay?" I couldn't see much from where I stood, just a narrow sliver through the door. But they were inside for a while before they brought her out. She looked like a ghost. Pale, thin, her eyes hollow like she hadn't slept in days. She wore a tank top and pajama pants. No shoes. Zip ties still loose around her wrists. Her hands trembled as they led her out. She looked at me. No, through me. Like I wasn't even real. Like she was still somewhere else entirely. That look, God, I'll never forget it. It was the kind of look someone has when they've seen something they can't unsee. When they've survived something that should have broken them. One of the officers gently placed his hand on her back, guiding her out. Another ran to the squad car and came back with a blanket, wrapping it around her shoulders. She kept whispering something under her breath, repeating it over and over. But I couldn't make out the words. The cops didn't let me go back inside right away. I had to stay out in the hallway while they asked me questions. I told them everything I could, which wasn't much. Just the things I'd heard that night and the weird sounds over the past few weeks. I remember my voice trembling as I described it, still trying to process what had just happened. That's when one of the officers said something that hit me like a punch to the chest. She told us she's been in there for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. That wall I'd been sleeping next to every single night. A woman had been behind it, tied up, trapped, held hostage by that guy, Josh, or whatever his real name was. Apparently he'd told a few neighbors she was out of town visiting family or on vacation. Meanwhile, he had her chained to a metal bed frame with blackout curtains covering the windows so no one could see in. That scream I heard that night. It was her last attempt. Her final push. She told the cops she didn't think she'd survive another night. Inside, they found empty water bottles and fast food wrappers littering the floor. No lights on. No furniture except the bed frame and an old chair. He'd taken her phone, shut off her access to everything. No way to call for help. No way out. What made it even more disturbing was what they pieced together after. He was leaving during the day and only coming back at night. Like it was some kind of twisted routine. A life he was living alongside the horror he was inflicting on her. Like it was normal. They arrested him not long after. He got pulled over a few hours later trying to leave town. I didn't even see it happen. One of the neighbors filled me in the next day. But the part that's haunted me the most? It's how normal he seemed. Just a quiet guy with a backwards cap who barely spoke. Nothing threatening, nothing suspicious. And if I hadn't called, I still think about that all the time. That night I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I just sat on the edge of my bed staring at the wall, the same one she'd been behind, trying to understand how something so horrific could have been happening that close without me realizing. My stomach turned. I felt physically ill. Then came the guilt. The heavy kind. The kind that sticks to you and plays back everything you missed, every sound you ignored. Every time I turned up the TV, put in my earbuds, shut the world out. The dragging noises, the faint crying. All of it. I started wondering if she'd been trying to send signals the whole time and I'd just tuned them out. It messes with your head. You think you'll act fast in a situation like that. But when it's real, when it's happening right there, your brain doesn't want to believe it. It wants to cling to the idea that everything is fine. Because the truth is too horrifying to sit with. I didn't tell many people. Just my brother and one close friend. It felt too heavy to just drop into conversation. And honestly, I was still shaken. I kept thinking, what if no one had called? What if I hadn't been home? What if I'd just kept ignoring it, assuming it was plumbing or late-night TV? She would still be in there. Or worse. And the truth is, I almost didn't call. I hesitated. even after hearing her scream. A part of me was afraid I was overreacting, afraid I'd bother the police for nothing. That thought still haunts me. How close I came to doing nothing. A couple of weeks later, I broke my lease. I couldn't stay. Every creak, every noise made me jump. I couldn't stop picturing her in that room, terrified, tied up, waiting for someone to help. The landlord didn't give me any trouble. I think they just wanted to move on and bury it. But the unit next door stayed empty for a long time. No one wanted to live there after that. I couldn't blame them. That wall, it never felt like just drywall again. It became something else entirely. A reminder of how blind we can be to the horrors unfolding right next to us. Even now, whenever I move into a new place, I check the walls. I know it sounds paranoid, but I can't help it. If I hear something weird, anything, I stop what I'm doing and I listen. I don't brush it off anymore. I'd rather be wrong and embarrassed than right and silent. That experience changed me. It changed how I see everything. We're all so wrapped up in our own routines, our music, our shows, our screens. We tune out the world around us. We don't notice the screams unless they're loud. And even then, we hesitate. Because we want to believe everything is safe, predictable. But sometimes it just isn't. The weirdest part? After the arrest, after the cops, the neighbors, the news vans, it all stopped. No more crying. No more dragging sounds. Nothing. Just silence. And that silence, it still creeps me out more than anything else, because it reminds me of how easily something awful can hide in plain sight, and how little we really know about the people living just one wall away. I don't talk about this much. Honestly, whenever I've tried, people either brush it off or get visibly uncomfortable and steer the conversation elsewhere. But this memory, it's been wedged in my brain for years, like a splinter I can't dig out. Maybe writing it down will help me finally put it to rest. I was 17 at the time, still living with my parents in a quiet suburb just outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. One of those places where neighbors wave politely but don't actually talk to each other, where every lawn looks the same and nothing ever really happens. That summer was brutally hot and achingly slow, the kind of heat that makes the air feel thick, where you break a sweat just standing in the shade. The only remotely interesting thing going on was this new girl, Sarah. She'd just moved in across the street with her parents, 15, full of this bright, chatty energy that felt totally out of place in our sleepy neighborhood. She always wore oversized t-shirts, scuffed Vans, and had this big, effortless smile that made you like her whether you wanted to or not. We weren't exactly friends, but we'd exchange casual hellos now and then. Sometimes she'd wave while I was mowing the lawn or call out a quick "hey" if we crossed paths while I walked the dog. Just neighborhood stuff. Then there was Mr. Delaney. He lived at the end of our block in this weather-stained rancher with a sagging porch. I never knew his first name, nobody did. He must have been in his late 60s, maybe older, and looked like someone who'd just stopped trying. Same gray windbreaker every single day, even in the dead heat of July. His hair was wiry and overgrown like he hadn't been to a barber in years. He didn't seem dangerous, just off. Slow, maybe. He'd shuffle along the sidewalk with his eyes locked on the pavement, shoulders slumped like he was carrying some invisible weight. If you greeted him, he'd freeze for half a second, like the words had to fight their way through some fog in his head. Then he'd offer this small, twitchy smile and nod before continuing on. Sarah, though, she talked to him. A lot. More than anyone else, really. I'd see them from my window or during dog walks, her sitting on his porch rail, him in his usual chair, the two of them deep in conversation. It never looked creepy. She didn't seem afraid of him. If anything, it looked like she felt sorry for him. Then one day, she vanished. Just like that. No warnings, no screams, no broken windows or tire marks in the street. Gone. I remember that Monday like it was scorched into my skin. The humidity was unbearable, like the air was pressing down on you. At dinner, my mom mentioned she hadn't seen Sarah outside in a few days. It struck me as odd, but not alarming. Not yet. By Tuesday morning, there were 2 cop cars parked outside her house. I looked through my blinds and saw her parents on the lawn. Her mom was pacing in circles. Her dad just sat on the steps with his face in his hands. One of the officers was going door to door asking if anyone had seen Sarah after Saturday night. I hadn't. But something about the whole situation made my stomach knot. The way the air felt still and electric, like a thunderstorm was coming even though the sky was clear. Then came the whispers. Some neighbors said she must have run away. Others were convinced she'd gotten into a stranger's car. The theories spread fast, but nothing concrete. Not until about a week later, when Joanne, who lived 2 houses down from Mr. Delaney, told the police something that changed everything. She said she'd seen Sarah walk into Delaney's house around dusk that Saturday. Said she didn't think anything of it at the time because she'd seen them chatting before. But the disturbing part? No one saw her leave. Not that night. Not ever. Another neighbor came forward with the same thing. They saw her go in but never out. That's when everything shifted. It was like someone flipped a switch. More cops arrived. Crime scene tape went up around Delaney's property. The whole block fell into this eerie, watchful silence. People stood behind their curtains, whispering and watching. But Delaney, he didn't react. He just sat in that faded plastic lawn chair on his porch, rocking gently, his hands folded neatly in his lap. Like the swarm of investigators digging through his yard wasn't even real. Like none of it concerned him. There was no anger, no fear, not even confusion. Just that same vacant stare and the slow creak of the chair beneath him. They brought in dogs, started digging. First the backyard, then the garage. At one point, they were even crawling under the porch. I stood at the edge of the curb with a cluster of neighbors, all of us locked in that same stunned silence. None of us said it, but we all felt it in our bones. Something was deeply wrong. Still, Delaney didn't move, didn't speak. Then, late in the afternoon, they opened the front door to his house. I remember that sound with perfect clarity, this long, high-pitched creak, like the wood itself was trying to warn them not to enter. It made this groaning noise, like a door that hadn't been opened in years. Not just creaky but reluctant, like the house itself didn't want to let anyone in. I couldn't see much from where I stood across the street, but I remember this sudden cold in my stomach. My whole body tensed up, like it already knew something was terribly wrong. Nobody had said anything yet, but it was like my instincts were screaming. They stayed inside for hours. No shouting, no slamming of doors or hurried footsteps, just quiet movements, muffled voices over radios and the occasional shadow passing behind the curtains. Then an unmarked white van pulled up. That's when everything shifted. One of the officers came out pale as a sheet, talking quickly into his phone. Within minutes, more vehicles started arriving. Detectives, forensics, people in full suits and gloves, the kind you only see on TV when something really bad has happened. The cops pushed the neighbors back down the block, told us it was for our own safety. I tried to stay close, to pick up on anything, but eventually an officer came over and told me I needed to go home. "We'll release information soon," he said, but his face told a different story. Something grim he wasn't allowed to say out loud. That night, lights stayed on inside Delaney's house until well past midnight. Figures in white moved in and out carrying boxes and sealed containers, their expressions unreadable. But the most unsettling part? They didn't bring Delaney out. Not for hours. When they finally did, it was almost sunrise. The next morning it hit the news. Local channels ran it as, "Missing teen linked to local man's home." Somehow the media already had pieces of the story. They reported that police had found a concealed room in Delaney's basement. Not just hidden, sealed from the inside. That detail messed me up more than anything. How does a room get sealed from the inside? Who sealed it? Why? And what was in there? The article didn't offer answers. The police refused to confirm much, only saying the investigation was ongoing. But sources claimed they'd found personal belongings, Sarah's backpack, some of her clothes, maybe even her phone. But not Sarah. She was still missing. That's when the neighborhood lost it. Parents started keeping their kids indoors. Some families packed up and left town for a while. Delaney was taken into custody, but the last anyone saw of him, he looked vacant. Not confused, not scared, just hollow. Like he had no idea what any of it meant. Or maybe like he didn't care. They never charged him with murder. Only unlawful detainment. That's all they could prove. And while rumors started flying around, like wildfire, nothing official ever came out. People whispered about what they might have found. Chains bolted to the floor, a stained mattress, a bare light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Some even said there were deep scratch marks on the inside of the walls, like someone had been trying to claw their way out. I don't know what's true and what's neighborhood horror lore, but what I do know is this. Sarah was never found. And after a few weeks, the questions started piling up faster than the answers. If that room was sealed from the inside, how did her things get in there? Why didn't anyone hear anything? No screams, no banging, nothing. Just silence. The city eventually boarded up the house and it sat empty after that. But people claimed to see things, lights flickering in the windows when no one was inside. One night someone said they heard crying. A girl's voice, soft and far away. I don't know if I believe that, but after everything that happened, I can't say it's impossible either. I only walked by that house once after it all. I didn't mean to. It was months later and I'd taken a different route home without thinking. I didn't realize where I was until I looked up and saw it. The boards were still up, but something new caught my eye. Deep scratches along the wooden frame of the basement window. Long, frantic-looking gouges, like someone had clawed at it from the inside. My whole chest tightened. My brain couldn't even fully process what I was seeing. I just stood there, frozen, staring at those marks until a passing car jolted me out of it. I turned around and walked home as fast as I could. That was the last time I ever went near that end of the block. Years have passed. I moved away, left that town behind. But I still think about Sarah, about how someone like her, so vibrant, always smiling, could just disappear. No trace, no explanation, and the worst part? It happened in a house we all walked past every single day. Delaney ended up in some kind of facility. They said he wasn't mentally competent to stand trial. Last I heard, he died in his sleep. Never gave a confession. Never said a word about the room. Just gone. Like he took all the answers with him. And that's the part that haunts me. It didn't build slowly. It didn't escalate over time. 1 minute she was there, waving from across the street. And the next, she was gone. Like the universe hiccuped. Like reality glitched and erased her. No warning, no closure. Sometimes I lie awake wondering if she's still out there somewhere. Other times I imagine her in that room, alone, terrified, waiting for someone to open the door. But the thought I can't ever seem to shake is that feeling I had standing on the sidewalk that day, watching the cops go in, like something evil had been there all along, right under our noses, and we never saw it. I moved into that apartment off campus during my junior year. It was one of those cheap rentals students grab because it's close to campus, and the landlord doesn't ask questions. He didn't care how many of us lived there, as long as the rent came in on time. There were 4 of us, me, Rachel, Jamie, and Lauren. The place was old and kind of falling apart. Peeling paint, sticky cabinet doors, mismatched tiles, but it worked, barely. The walls were ridiculously thin. You could hear everything. Dogs barking 2 streets over, traffic from the main road, people yelling at all hours. But the worst noise always came from the unit next to us. 2 older men lived there. We never really talked to them, not even a nod in the hallway. Still, we heard them through the walls almost nightly. Loud arguments, things crashing, sometimes screaming. always around 3 a.m. We joked about it at first, called it the night fights. It became this weird ritual. If someone heard it, they'd text the group chat. They're at it again. We'd laugh it off, share memes, maybe knock on each other's doors for a sleepy debrief. But as the semester wore on, it stopped feeling funny. The screaming got worse. It wasn't the kind of yelling where two people were fighting. Sometimes it sounded like one person crying out in pain or fear and the other just quiet. Not yelling back, not reacting, just calm, or maybe just listening. That silence, it made everything worse. One night I pressed my ear to the wall during one of those episodes. The screaming had stopped suddenly, and then I heard whispering. Not just a few words. Whispering that went on and on, soft and steady, like a prayer or a chant. I don't even know how long I stood there like that, frozen. I was only pulled out of it when Rachel walked in behind me and said, what are you doing?" I jumped. I didn't even hear her come in. I just shook my head and backed away from the wall, muttering something about the guys next door. Behind our apartment was a narrow alley choked with overgrown trees and lined with a broken chain-link fence. It was pitch black at night. Raccoons would knock over the trash cans back there, so we were used to random clattering, weird scratching sounds. But one night, something felt different. I went to bed around midnight like usual. Then, sometime just before 3 a.m., I woke up like someone had yanked me out of a dream. No sound, nothing, just an eerie stillness. Then, tap, tap. It came from my window, soft, deliberate. I froze. My room's on the ground floor and my bed sits right against the wall under the window. At first I thought maybe it was a branch tapping in the wind, but the sound was too regular, too human, like fingernails. I held my breath, staring at the curtains. I didn't move, not an inch. I just listened. Tap, tap, tap. It went on for, I don't know how long, a minute, 5. Time stopped. Then it finally ceased, and I slowly sat up, barely making a sound. I didn't pull the curtain back. I couldn't. I was too afraid of what I might see on the other side. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Soft, slow, moving away. Not raccoons, not animals. These were heavy human footsteps crunching on dirt and leaves. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I went outside and checked under my window. The ground was soft from the rain earlier that week, and I saw footprints. Big ones. Way too big to belong to any of the girls. I called the others out and showed them. Jamie tried to laugh. Maybe someone was drunk, wandered through the alley, got confused. But I knew better. It felt too intentional, too precise. That same afternoon, around lunch, we saw a police car parked out front. Not super unusual for our neighborhood, honestly. Stuff happened around here. But this time, the officers walked up to the apartment next door, the one with the screams. They knocked, and after a minute or so, one of the older men answered. Big guy, probably late 50s, heavy-set with this annoyed look on his face like they'd interrupted his nap. But he didn't fight them. No shouting, no fuss. Just nodded, turned around, and let them cuff him. They led him out, calm as ever. We stood there in our doorway just watching like a bunch of stunned idiots. One of the officers glanced over at us but didn't say anything. Just got in the car with the guy and drove off. You'd think that would be the end of it. But that night, I couldn't sleep again. I kept thinking about the tapping on my window, the whispering behind the wall, the calm way that man walked out with the police. Around 2:45 a.m., I sat upright in bed, completely awake, heart pounding for no reason at all. I was lying in bed, wide awake, when I heard something. A faint creak outside, almost too soft to be real. I froze. My room was dark, lit only by the dull glow of my phone screen. I grabbed it like a lifeline and slowly inched toward the window. This time I didn't just listen. I slid the curtain open. Just a crack. Nothing. Just the backyard. The broken fence. trees swaying gently in the early morning breeze. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I stared out for what must have been 10 full minutes, barely blinking, every shadow looking suspicious. Eventually, I forced myself back into bed. Somehow, I must have drifted off, because the next thing I remember was waking to the sound of knocking, sharp and steady, at the front door. It was around 6 a.m. The sunlight spilled across the floor, too warm and bright for how cold I felt inside. I cracked the front door, still half asleep, and standing there was a police officer, not one of the ones from the day before. He asked politely if he could come in and speak with all four of us. Said it wouldn't take long. His voice was calm, but there was a weight behind it. We gathered in the living room, still groggy and confused, and let him talk. He started by saying they'd arrested the man next door, one of the two we'd always heard through the wall. Apparently he'd assaulted a woman in another part of town the week before, but that wasn't why he was there. He said when they searched the guy's phone, they found photographs. That got our attention. Then he looked at me, directly at me, and said something that made my stomach drop. They found pictures of a window, my bedroom window, taken from the outside. Not just one, multiple shots from different nights. I remember whispering, "How do you know it was mine?" The officer didn't hesitate. The floral curtains, they're visible in every photo. I couldn't speak. I just sat there, frozen. I didn't feel like a person in that moment, just a target, a thing, something someone had watched. The officer went on, said they hadn't found any signs of entry, but the window frame showed clear tool marks. Someone had tried to pry it open. That was it for me. I packed a bag that afternoon and stayed at a friend's place across town. I couldn't go back into that room without my hands shaking. The idea that someone had stood outside my window, taking pictures of me while I slept, maybe even trying to get in, it made my skin crawl. But the worst part? The guy they arrested wasn't even the only one who lived there, and no one ever saw the second man again. We tried asking the landlord, asked who the other tenant was. He just shrugged and said as far as he knew, only one person was listed on the lease. Rent was always paid in cash. No complaints. No reason to inspect. He looked genuinely confused when we pressed him. The police came back a couple more times with follow-up questions, but nothing ever came of it. No charges related to the window. No answers about the second man. Just more loose ends. The apartment next door stayed empty after that. Nobody ever came to clean it out. No movers. No trash on the curb. Just silence. One day the unit was buzzing with noise, and the next, it was like it had been abandoned. Even after I came back to our place, I couldn't bring myself to sleep in my room again. I dragged my mattress into the living room and kept it there for the rest of the semester. It felt safer somehow, being near the others. We bought a cheap motion sensor camera and installed it in the backyard just in case. For a while, nothing happened. Then, about 2 weeks later, it recorded something. Just a few seconds of footage, but enough. A shape, blurry, human, standing near the fence. Not moving, just watching. And then it was gone. The motion light had turned on, flooding the yard. We ran outside within seconds. No one was there. We brought the footage to the cops. They said they'd keep it on file, but didn't sound too hopeful. Said it could have been a shadow, someone passing through, maybe nothing at all. But I knew better. After that, I stopped opening the blinds, even during the day. Knowing someone had taken pictures from the outside made me feel constantly exposed, like the entire back wall was glass and I was always being watched. I even started sleeping with music on, just something to fill the silence. Every creak made me jump. Every soft sound outside sent my heart racing. I couldn't relax, couldn't feel safe in my own home. And it was worse because there was never a full explanation. No closure. Just scattered fragments that didn't add up. A missing tenant, a man with photos of my window, tool marks on the frame, and silence. The police never followed up again. The unit next door stayed locked. The landlord didn't even try to rent it out. It's been over a year now. I've moved to a different city, a different apartment, but I still check my windows every night before I sleep. I still keep curtains closed and double-check the locks. I still catch myself listening when I wake up around 3:01 a.m., just in case I hear that tapping again. It happened last spring, toward the end of March. I was living in a small aging apartment complex just outside of Tacoma, Washington, with my 2 kids, Emily, who had just turned 6, and Noah, who was 4. My husband had left for an overseas work assignment a few weeks earlier, so it was just the 3 of us. I was doing my best to keep things together, school drop-offs, bedtime routines, working remotely during the day. It wasn't ideal, but we'd fallen into a rhythm that at the time felt manageable. That night, like every other, I got the kids tucked in by 8:30. Emily insisted on 2 bedtime stories, and Noah wanted me to check under the bed for monsters, something he never used to ask for until his dad left. After they were asleep, I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and flopped onto the couch, half watching some forgettable true crime docuseries on Netflix, just trying to wind down. Then, at 1 a.m., I heard it. The buzzer from the front entrance of the building. A harsh metallic sound that cut through the quiet like a blade. It's the kind you press when you need someone to buzz you in from the outside. I live on the 3rd floor, and our system doesn't have any intercom or camera, just the noise. No way to talk back. No way to see who it is. At first I figured someone must have hit the wrong apartment. Maybe drunk. Maybe lost. I waited for a follow-up buzz that never came. Still, something about it got under my skin. It wasn't just the sound. It was how wrong it felt. Like the air shifted. I tried to brush it off, turned the volume up, and went back to my show. But the unease stuck with me. It was like my body knew something before my brain did. My skin too tight, like it was shrinking around me. Eventually, I turned off the TV and crawled into bed, but sleep didn't come easy. I kept staring at the ceiling, listening for any more sounds. Nothing. The next night it happened again. 1:06 a.m., a single buzz. Same as before. I froze on the couch, eyes locked in the door, every muscle in my body tense. Again, no knock, no footsteps in the hallway. Just that hollow, echoing silence afterward. My heart was hammering. I laid there awake for hours, staring at the shadows moving across the ceiling, trying to rationalize it away. Just a coincidence, I told myself. A technical glitch. Someone leaning on the button by mistake. But the next day I couldn't shake it. That pit in my stomach was still there. Heavy, growing. So I brought it up with Mrs. Gallagher, my downstairs neighbor. She's in her late 60s, lives alone, and always has fresh lavender by her door. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Did your buzzer go off the last couple nights, around 1 in the morning?" She shook her head. "Nope, didn't hear a thing. Why, did yours?" I nodded slowly. "Twice now." Mrs. Gallagher raised an eyebrow, but didn't say much else. Just gave me that tight-lipped smile older women use when they're trying not to scare you. That's when the anxiety really sank in. If it was a random person pressing buttons, wouldn't someone else have heard it too? Later that evening, I asked the kids if they'd heard anything weird. Emily said no without looking up from her coloring book. Noah just shrugged and said, "I had a bad dream." That night, I found him curled up in bed with Emily. He hadn't asked permission. He just went there. That's not like him. Then came the 3rd night. It was worse. The first buzz came early, 10:03 p.m., just one. Sharp and loud. I was in the kitchen cleaning up dinner plates when it happened, and I dropped a fork. It clanged against the tile, echoing through the space. I stood there, frozen, just listening. Nothing followed. Then again at 1:11 a.m., another buzz. This time, I didn't move right away. I just sat there on the edge of my bed, clutching my phone in one hand, my other hand gripping the blanket so tightly it hurt. Every light in the apartment was off except the hallway nightlight. My breath felt stuck somewhere between my chest and throat. Finally, I forced myself up and tiptoed into the living room. I parted the blinds just enough to see out. There was someone standing by the bushes across the street. Not walking, not pacing, just standing. They were dressed in black, wearing a hood pulled low. The streetlight nearby flickered slightly, making everything look even more distorted. I couldn't make out their face, but I swear, they were facing my building, watching. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't sleep that night, not even a minute. I stayed in bed, every sound amplified in the dark, pipes creaking, wind brushing against the windows, the occasional distant car. I kept my phone clutched in my hand, thumb hovering over 911, heart pounding so loudly it felt like it was shaking the room. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Mike, the property manager. He's in his mid-50s, always smells like stale coffee and that musky cedar cologne guys wear when they want to seem outdoorsy. I told him everything, about the buzzing, about the figure I saw, about how it kept happening at the same time every night. He let out a long sigh like I was overreacting. Probably just a kid messing around, he said. Or a homeless guy. You know how it gets around here sometimes. I'll keep an eye out, but it's probably nothing. Mike, I said, trying to steady my voice, this isn't just some prank, it's 3 nights in a row, the exact same time, and someone was standing outside watching the building. He chuckled lightly, like he was trying to calm me down. I get it, I really do. But unless there's damage or a break-in, there's not a lot I can do. I hung up, furious and afraid. I knew what I saw. And more than that, I felt it. That deep, visceral kind of dread that makes it hard to think straight. Like your body is already bracing for something and all you can do is wait. That night, I didn't even try to sleep. I didn't go to bed that night. I couldn't. I made myself stay up, sitting in the living room near the front window, all the lights off. My phone was clenched in one hand, a flashlight in the other, thumb twitching against the power button. I kept the kids with me in my bedroom, locked the door behind us and piled a few chairs against it, just in case. They were both fast asleep in my bed, unaware of the anxiety curling tighter and tighter in my chest like a fist that wouldn't unclench. Sure enough, right around 1 a.m., the buzzer went off again. But this time, it wasn't alone. I heard footsteps in the hallway outside, slow, dragging, like someone didn't care about being quiet, like they wanted to be heard. I froze. My whole body tensed. I couldn't even breathe. For a moment, I thought maybe I was imagining it, that my mind was playing tricks on me from too little sleep and too much fear. But then I heard it again. A shuffle. The faint scrape of a shoe. I got up, every step toward the door feeling like I was sinking into concrete. I leaned toward the peephole praying I'd see nothing. But there was someone, standing just feet away on the other side of the door. I couldn't make out a face, just a dark hoodie pulled low and what looked like gloves on their hands. They weren't moving, just standing there, waiting. I backed away as quietly as I could, barely daring to breathe. My fingers trembled as I grabbed my phone. I called 911. It was hard to even press the buttons. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. When the dispatcher picked up, I whispered into the phone, trying to keep my voice steady. "There's someone outside my apartment," I said. "He's right outside my door. I have 2 small kids with me." She was calm, thank God. She told me to stay where I was, to stay quiet, and that police were already in the area. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. Every second felt like a lifetime. I sat on the floor beside the bed, phone pressed to my ear, eyes locked on the hallway. I don't know how long I sat there like that. It felt like hours. Realistically, it was probably 10, maybe 15 minutes. At one point, I heard the person knock, softly, on a neighbor's door down the hall. Then nothing. Just silence again, until a sudden loud bang echoed from downstairs. The front entrance. The police had arrived. A few minutes later, officers were outside my apartment. When I opened the door, My knees nearly gave out from the relief. But the hallway was empty. Whoever had been there was gone. Still, they found something. Pry marks on the window in Noah's room. My stomach dropped. I hadn't even gone in there that night. Both kids had slept with me. If they hadn't. An officer named Ramirez, probably in his early 30s, walked me through what he found. He was gentle about it, but the way he spoke, it made it real. "Looks like someone tried to lift the window from the outside," he said, squatting next to it. "Didn't manage to get it all the way open. See here?" He pointed to the frame. There were marks, scratches, even a bit of chipped paint. But what really made my blood run cold were the faint smudges on the glass. Fingerprints. Tiny ones, right next to where my son's head would have been if he were sleeping in that bed. The officers swept the entire property. Flashlights moved across every corner of the narrow pathways, the hedges behind the dumpster. They checked the laundry room, the bike racks, even the maintenance shed. Around 3:00 a.m., another knock. This time it was Ramirez again, his face pale, his voice more serious than before. "We found something," he said. He led me downstairs to the basement storage room, the one that's supposed to be locked, the one no tenant uses because it smells like mildew and burnt wiring. Someone had been living down there. They found an old sleeping bag spread out in the corner, a half-empty backpack, crushed snack wrappers, an empty water bottle, and worst of all, what was inside a black drawstring bag tucked behind a stack of boxes. Inside were gloves, wire cutters, a roll of duct tape, a flashlight, and a small, unmarked spray bottle filled with a clear liquid, and a notebook. Small, beat up. The pages were filled with scribbles, apartment numbers, notes on which units responded to buzzers, and then I saw it. My name, my full name, written 3 times. Turns out someone had been living in that basement for at least a week, maybe longer. He'd found a way in through the garage, which Mike later admitted hadn't locked properly in months. He was using the buzzers to study people, to figure out who was awake, who looked through their blinds, who turned on their lights. The single buzz was a test. The second was confirmation. They think that's how he chose his targets. I didn't sleep for 3 days after that. I sat up on the couch with the kitchen knife beside me, every light in the apartment on. Every noise, pipes creaking, neighbors walking above me, the fridge kicking on, felt like an intrusion. I barely ate. I barely breathed. 2 nights later, they found him, hiding behind a dumpster, just 2 buildings over. He was wearing the same black hoodie. His name was Brett Hammond. He had a record, petty theft, trespassing, and an old restraining order from a woman in Oregon. I didn't go to the court hearing. I couldn't bring myself to even think about being in the same room as him. All I knew was that he'd been watching us, watching me, and if I hadn't kept the kids in my room that night, I don't let myself finish that thought. We moved 2 weeks later. New apartment, new locks, new everything. Now I triple-check the windows every night. I keep the buzzer volume turned all the way down. I can't stand the sound of it, it turns my stomach. I never told the kids the full story. Just said someone was sneaking around and the police handled it. But sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet and that old creeping anxiety starts to set in again, I think about those tiny fingerprints on the glass. And I wonder how many times he stood there, just watching us. I was 24 and in my second year of nursing school when it happened. I'd moved to Milwaukee a few months earlier and was renting a room in one of those old 4-unit houses near campus. It wasn't anything fancy, peeling paint, creaky floors, but it was cheap and mostly quiet, which was all I needed with the night shifts and endless study sessions. The house had 2 apartments on the upper floor and 2 below. I lived in the upper left unit. Across the narrow hallway from me was a guy named Ian. I only knew his name because a package for him got delivered to my door by mistake one evening. That was the only reason I even knew he existed. Ian was quiet. Not the awkward but polite kind of quiet. more like he wasn't really there. He never made eye contact, never said hi, just sort of drifted. Sometimes I'd pass him in the hallway and my stomach would tighten, like I'd just walked under a cold draft. I told myself I was just overtired or being paranoid from lack of sleep. Ian always wore a hoodie, always. Even on the warmer days in late spring when I'd be sweating just walking up the stairs. I never saw him with anyone. No friends, no visitors, not even a food delivery. His door was always locked, always shut, and somehow that made that side of the hall feel colder. Not physically colder, just off, like something heavy was pressing against the air itself. But it was the nights when things really started to feel wrong. It began with the faint sound of music drifting through the wall around 2 or 3 a.m. Not songs exactly, more like lullabies played in slow motion or ambient tracks that made the hairs on your neck rise. Then came the sounds of furniture scraping against the floor, like something heavy was being dragged. But I never heard him walking around. No footsteps, no talking, just those dragging sounds. And then the crying started. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even obvious at first. Just soft, muffled sobs, like someone trying not to be heard. They would come and go in strange intervals. I honestly thought maybe Ian was grieving. Maybe he was dealing with depression or had lost someone close. I felt bad for even being creeped out. But the more I listened, the more something about it felt unnatural. The crying wasn't random. It followed a rhythm almost like it was rehearsed. Timed. That's what started to unsettle me the most. Then came the smell. I'll never forget it. It hit me the second I stepped into the hallway one morning. This thick, rancid stench. Mildew, sweat, and something sharp and metallic underneath like pennies soaked in warm water. Like blood. I opened all my windows, thinking maybe a pipe had burst or something had died in the walls. But it just got worse. The next day I finally texted Dave, our landlord, who lived in one of the downstairs units. I told him the smell was bad and that it seemed to be coming from across the hall. He texted back saying he'd come by the next afternoon to check it out. That night I barely slept. The crying returned, but it sounded different, closer. It wasn't muffled by walls anymore. It was as if whoever was making the noise had moved closer to the door. Or maybe they knew help was coming. The next afternoon around 2 and I heard someone coming up the stairs. My clinical rotation had been canceled that day, and I was relieved I didn't have to be alone when Dave showed up. I stepped out into the hallway just as he hit the top step. He smelled it immediately. I saw the way his face changed, eyebrows pinched, lips pressing together like he was trying not to gag. Dave knocked on Ian's door, called his name once, twice. Nothing. I haven't seen him leave in days, I said quietly, arms crossed over my chest. Dave glanced at me, then turned back to the door. Screw it, he muttered, and pulled out his ring of keys. The first one didn't fit. His jaw tightened. He must have changed the lock, he said, like it wasn't a big deal. But it was. Tenants aren't supposed to do that without permission. That's when Dave stepped back, gave the door a hard shove with his shoulder, and the frame cracked as it popped open. The smell hit us like a punch to the gut. I stumbled back, covering my nose and mouth, eyes watering instantly. Dave pulled his sleeve over his face and stepped inside. I hesitated, heart pounding, then followed a few seconds later, holding my breath. The air inside felt wrong. Not just the stench, something else, like the room itself didn't want us there. It was dark. The curtains were drawn tight, and the only light came from a single old lamp on the floor, casting long, warped shadows across the room. Just enough illumination to make out vague shapes, and something else. There were clothes everywhere, scattered across the floor like they'd been dropped mid-motion. Food containers were piled in one corner, some still half full, others rotting. And in the center of the room was a mattress. No bed frame, no sheets, just a filthy mattress on the floor. At first I thought it was empty, but as I stepped closer I saw her, a girl. She couldn't have been more than 15, maybe 16. She was curled up, lying still on her side, her wrists zip-tied to one end of the bed frame, ankles too. A thin, stained blanket barely covered her. She didn't even flinch when we came in, didn't look at us. Her face was pale, hollow, almost expressionless. Her eyes were open but distant, like she wasn't really there. I froze. Dave just stood in the doorway whispering, "Oh my God. Oh my God." Over and over, like his brain couldn't catch up to what he was seeing. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe right. My thoughts jammed like gears grinding against each other, my body stiff as stone. Then she turned her head slightly, just slightly, and in the softest voice I've ever heard, she said, "Please don't shut the door." That snapped everything back into motion. I don't even remember grabbing my phone or dialing 911. One moment I was staring at her, the next my hands were trembling as I spoke to the dispatcher, my voice unsteady, saying, "There's a girl tied up in my neighbor's room." The cops got there fast, really fast, within minutes. They stormed in, cleared the place, got her out. I watched from the hallway as paramedics wrapped her in a blanket and led her away. She didn't say anything, just stared forward with those hollow eyes. We all had to give statements. Police questioned me, Dave, even the neighbors downstairs. Turned out, the girl was a runaway from a nearby town. Ian had met her online, pretended to be a teenager too, lured her in, and he'd kept her there, locked in that room for weeks. Weeks. I'd been living across the hall, sleeping, eating, studying, brushing my teeth, while she was trapped in that room, just feet away, right on the other side of that door. After the ambulance pulled away and the cops packed up, everything felt surreal. The hallway looked the same. The walls hadn't changed. But something inside me had. I couldn't stop picturing her lying there. Couldn't stop replaying the sounds, the smells, the feeling I'd ignored. The guilt hit me like a slow-building wave that never fully crashed. I'd heard things. Crying. I'd smelled it. I knew something was wrong, and I did nothing, not until it got unbearable. That guilt still sits in my stomach like a stone. I keep thinking, what if I had knocked on that door a week earlier? What if I'd just asked? Would she have whispered to me too? Would Ian have panicked? Would it have made a difference? They didn't find Ian for 3 more days. He'd vanished before Dave forced the door, which meant he probably knew someone was coming. He'd gotten ahead of it. They eventually found him holed up in a storage unit a few miles away. I saw his mugshot online. Same dead stare, same hoodie, calm, expressionless, like he couldn't even grasp the gravity of what he'd done. When they called me in to give a full statement, I had to relive every moment, every sound I'd brushed off, every time I'd put on headphones to drown out the crying, every time I chose not to act. For days after, I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. I moved out 2 weeks later. Didn't wait for the lease to end. I begged my cousin to let me crash on her couch. I didn't pack much, just what I could throw in a duffel bag. That building, that hallway, I can't explain how much it warped my sense of safety. You always think you'd know if something horrible was happening next to you, that your instincts would kick in, that you'd sense the evil, but you don't. People like him don't walk around with signs on their foreheads. They live next door. They keep quiet. They stay invisible. And we tell ourselves it's not our business, until it is. Until a door opens and the truth comes pouring out like rot. I think about her sometimes. I don't know her name. No one ever told me. I don't know where she is now or what kind of life she's trying to rebuild, but I hope she's okay. I hope someone is seeing her, truly seeing her, and making her feel safe again. As for me, I don't ignore anything anymore. If I hear a strange sound, I check. If something smells off, I don't write it off as old pipes or weird neighbors. I ask. I knock. I call. Because I can't unsee what I saw that day. And I'll never forget how easy it was to live right next to a nightmare. without even realizing it until it was too late. I'm not usually the type to post personal stuff online, definitely not something like this. But what happened to me last year still keeps me up some nights. And I don't know, maybe putting it into words, even anonymously, might help. My name's Chris. I'm 41. After my divorce, I moved into a modest little duplex on the north side of Jacksonville. Quiet neighborhood, mostly older folks. The kind of place where people give you a wave from their porches but don't ask questions. That suited me fine. I wasn't looking to make friends, I just wanted to lay low and rebuild. I was renting the left unit. The right side belonged to a man named Gary. He looked like he was pushing 70, always had this beat-up baseball cap on, even when mowing the lawn at sunset. We'd exchanged a few hellos, a nod here and there, but he wasn't much of a talker. Again, fine by me. I was in a keep-to-myself chapter of life. Out back, there was a detached garage. Nothing fancy. Old wooden structure, paint peeling, 2 creaky doors, and a single floodlight bolted above the entrance. I used it mostly for storage. Tools, some moving boxes, my bike, and all the miscellaneous junk you accumulate when a marriage ends. One night in early November, I came home after grabbing a burger from this 24-hour spot. It was around 10:30 p.m. I parked, stepped out, and saw the garage light was on. That caught me off guard. I knew. I'd turned it off before leaving. I double-checked that kind of stuff now. Living alone again made me paranoid in a cautious way. I walked around the side yard, unlocked the door, and peeked in. Everything looked fine. Nothing out of place. No mess, no signs of a break-in. Still, something felt off, like the air was holding its breath. I switched the light off, locked up again, and told myself I probably forgot. I'd been scatterbrained lately. Divorce does that. The next morning, I headed out to the garage to grab a wrench, and the moment I opened the door, my gut twisted. One of the drawers on my tool chest was halfway open. Another one looked like someone had rummaged through it. A small box of screws had spilled across the floor, and my box cutter, it was gone. That was the first thing I knew wasn't my doing. I'm meticulous with tools. I'd never just misplace something like that. I checked the lock again. Still intact, windows unbroken, no signs of forced entry. My mind started racing. Could a kid have snuck in? But how? The place was secure. Then I started second-guessing myself. Maybe I left the drawer open. Maybe the box of screws fell. I walked back inside, tried to get on with my day, but the more I thought about it, the more that crawling unease took over. That afternoon, I drove down to the hardware store and picked up one of those cheap motion sensor cameras. Nothing fancy, just something I could aim toward the garage from the corner of the yard. I wasn't expecting to catch anything, I just needed some peace of mind. For the next few nights it was uneventful, just clips of squirrels, raccoons, and one very persistent stray cat who kept sniffing around the trash bin. Then came the fourth night. It was around 3:12 a.m. I was reviewing the footage in bed, half asleep, when the motion alert came through. I tapped the screen, and what I saw made my stomach plummet. There, moving slowly across the camera's view, was a man. He came from behind the garage, tall, deliberate in his steps. The footage wasn't high resolution, but it was clear enough. He approached the back panel of the garage, knelt down, and slipped inside, through a section of the wood siding that had been loosened. I paused the footage and just stared. My skin felt like it was buzzing. I zoomed in. It was Gary. Same slouched posture, same old baseball cap. The way he moved wasn't frantic like someone caught in the act. It was slow, familiar, like he'd done it before. I must have watched that clip a dozen times trying to make it make sense, trying to convince myself it was someone else or that I was misreading it. But no, it was him. And the weirdest part? He didn't take anything. He stayed inside for maybe 5 minutes. Then he came out, the same way he went in, disappeared around the back, slipping through a gap in the fence that separated our yards. The next morning in daylight, I went to check the spot. Sure enough, a couple of the wooden slats near the bottom of the garage siding had been pried loose, just enough for someone to crawl through. That was the moment when my vague discomfort snapped into full-on dread. I should have called the cops right then. I know that now. But back then? I hesitated. What if I was wrong? What if he was just some confused old man looking for something he thought was his? Maybe he used to own the place. Maybe he thought it was still his garage. I didn't want to be that neighbor, the new guy stirring up trouble. So instead, I printed a freeze frame from the footage, stapled it to a piece of cardboard, and hid it in my bedroom drawer. And inside the garage, I left a note. Just a piece of paper taped to the tool chest. I know someone's been in here, it's on camera. I figured that would be enough. A warning, something to make him stop. And for a few nights, it did seem to work. No more strange lights, no new disturbances. I started sleeping a little better, until the following Monday. I got home from work around 6, groceries in hand, walked around the back like I always did, and froze. The garage door was wide open, not unlocked, open, like someone wanted me to see it. I rushed into the garage, heart pounding, and immediately knew something was wrong. The place was trashed. Shelves had been knocked over, tools scattered across the concrete like someone had thrown a tantrum or was frantically searching for something. A blue tarp had been ripped off an old cabinet I hadn't touched in months, and its doors were hanging open, empty. But it didn't feel like a robbery. Nothing valuable was taken. Just chaos. Like whoever had been in there wasn't looking to steal but to find something. Or worse, like they'd lost control in the middle of doing it. That same heavy, crawling feeling crept back up my spine, the one I'd felt when I watched the footage. But this time there was something new. In the back corner of the garage, near the spot where the siding had been loosened, there was a small pile of cigarette butts, 6 or 7 of them, nestled in a little blackened circle, as if someone had been sitting there, waiting. That was it. That was the moment I stopped making excuses for Gary. I called the police. When the officers arrived, I showed them everything. The footage, the cigarette pile, the loose fence slats, even the bent nails at the back panel. I expected skepticism, maybe a quick note and a promise to look into it. But to my surprise, they took it seriously, very seriously. They asked if I'd had any conflicts with my neighbor, any reason to believe he might target me. I shook my head. No, nothing. Gary's quiet. I barely hear a sound through the wall. We barely speak. One of the officers looked at me and asked, "Would you be willing to let us set up a sting?" I hesitated. A sting? Just keep things the way they are. Let the camera run. We'll keep eyes on it. If he comes back, we move in. I told them they could do whatever they wanted, as long as I didn't have to stay there during it. That night I packed a bag and crashed at my buddy Trevor's place across town. But sleep didn't come easy. I kept picturing myself walking into that garage on any other night. What if he'd been in there already, hiding behind the cabinet, waiting for me to flip the switch and shut the door? 2 nights later, at 2:40 a.m., the camera caught him again. Same slow approach, same path. He crept along the side of the garage like he was walking a line he'd rehearsed. But this time, he didn't go straight in. He crouched by the corner and just watched the garage door, waiting, studying. After a couple minutes, he moved toward the loosened panel again, started adjusting it like he was fine-tuning his entry point. His hands were methodical, like he'd done this before. That's when the squad car rolled up. No lights, no sirens. Just 2 officers moving fast through the side yard. Gary tried to dart back through the fence, but they grabbed him before he could get far. What they found on him made my blood run cold. A large hunting knife, a bundle of zip ties, and a pair of black gloves shoved into the inside pocket of his coat. They searched the area behind the fence in daylight. Just a few feet from where he was caught, hidden in some weeds, they found a black duffel bag. Inside, a roll of duct tape, a flashlight, and a small bottle of pills. Prescription unknown. That was when it became clear. He hadn't been trying to steal my tools. Later, one of the detectives walked me through their theory. The way he had loosened the garage panel weeks before. The cigarette butts. The fact that he'd come back at different times, like he was studying my schedule. It all pointed to something far worse than petty theft. He was planning to ambush you, the officer said quietly. Probably waiting for the right night, for you to come home late just like you do most days. It wasn't random. And the worst part? I'd been right there, feet away from a man who had been preparing, planning to hurt me. Maybe worse. And I'd ignored the signs, the light turning on, the drawer I didn't remember opening, that lingering sense I sometimes had while crossing the yard, like eyes were on me. I brushed all of it off. Gary was charged with attempted burglary and possession of a weapon with intent to harm. They didn't have quite enough for attempted murder, but the DA said they were pushing for the maximum sentence. I never saw him again. After the arrest, his side of the duplex sat empty for a few weeks before someone finally came and boarded it up. I broke my lease not long after that. Didn't even bother packing everything, I just wanted out. Now I live in a condo. Underground parking, keycard entry, multiple cameras. I check every one of them before bed. Twice. I still have that screenshot. The one of Gary crouched in the shadows by the garage, sliding inside like he belonged there. It's in my desk drawer. I don't keep it to scare myself. I keep it to remind me. People ask sometimes why I didn't catch on sooner, why I wasn't more aware. But here's the truth. Horror doesn't always look like a monster or a masked figure in the dark. Sometimes, it's the quiet neighbor with a soft smile, the one who tips his cap while watering his lawn, the one who nods politely when you pass, the one waiting for the moment you stop paying attention. I've never really been the type to post on forums like this, but what happened a few months ago still won't leave my head. I think I just need to get it out. I live in Salt Lake City, in a gated apartment complex that always felt pretty secure. Keypad entry, cameras, neighbors who mostly keep to themselves. I moved in after my divorce, just trying to start over. Honestly, I liked how quiet it was. Peaceful, low drama. The building has a shared laundry room in the basement. You can only get in with a separate key, and it's not creepy or anything, just kind of dim and stale, the way most old basements are. I usually avoided going down there at night, not because I was scared or anything, just, I don't know. Something about it always made me uneasy when the sun went down. That night, though, I was out of clean clothes and didn't have much of a choice. It was around 8:30 p.m. when I grabbed my laundry basket and headed downstairs. The hallway lights were still on, casting that dull yellow glow down the concrete walls. But when I got to the laundry room, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. Not wide open, just cracked enough to show it hadn't latched all the way. That wasn't unheard of. People forget to close it properly all the time. I pushed it open slowly, and the first thing that hit me was the dark. All the overhead lights were off, but I could hear two machines running. The low hum and occasional thud of the cycle shifting. It made me pause in the doorway. Maybe someone had already started their laundry and just gone back upstairs. I reached for the switch, flicked it on. Nothing. No light. I sighed, assuming the bulb had gone out or maybe the switch was faulty. Either way, I wasn't about to bother maintenance just for one load of laundry. I turned on my phone flashlight, the cold white glow cutting through the dark, and stepped inside. I set my basket down and started tossing clothes into one of the washers. The room felt off. Not scary exactly, just wrong in a way I couldn't put my finger on. Too quiet, except for the machines, and colder than usual. Like a draft was blowing in from somewhere, even though the windows down there don't open. I hurried through it, just wanting to finish and get back upstairs. I slammed the washer door shut, reached to add detergent, and froze. There was someone standing in the doorway. A man. Just standing there, completely still. Not a sound. I nearly dropped my phone. It was the guy from the unit directly above mine. I didn't know his name. Never had a conversation with him. But I'd seen him a few times. Walking his dog, smoking on his balcony. He always gave off this odd vibe. Not threatening, just off. Twitchy. Distant. Now he was just standing there, watching me. His face was blank. His eyes locked on me. Not like I'd startled him. Not like he was confused about why I was there. He was looking at me like he'd been waiting. My skin prickled all over. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. So I did the first thing I could think of. I pretended to be on the phone. "Oh, hey, yeah, I'm just grabbing my laundry. I'll be up in a sec," I said loud enough for him to hear, holding my phone to my ear. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. I muttered, "Excuse me," and forced myself to walk past him. Too quickly, probably, and back out into the hallway. I didn't run, but I was close. I didn't look back until I reached my apartment door. When I did, the hallway was empty. Once I was inside, I locked the door and leaned against it, heart hammering in my chest. I stood there for a long minute trying to catch my breath. "What the hell was that?" I whispered to myself. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I'd startled him. Maybe he'd just come down to check his laundry. But the machines were already running when I got there. And he didn't have anything with him. No laundry basket, no phone, no keys. Just him, standing silently in the dark. The more I thought about it, the worse it felt. Something was off. Deeply off. I even went to my window and waited to see if he'd come out of the basement. He never did. That whole night, I barely slept. Every little creak or thump from the ceiling made me jump. I kept thinking about that stare. Not curious, not surprised, just watching. The next morning, I tried to convince myself I was being dramatic. Maybe I was just stressed. Maybe the divorce and being alone had me on edge. I went back downstairs to switch my laundry like nothing had happened. He wasn't there. Everything seemed normal, but that feeling never really went away. After that night, I started doing laundry only during the day, even if it meant rearranging my work schedule. I didn't care. I wasn't going back down there after dark. One afternoon at work, I brought it up to a coworker who also lived in the complex. Just casually, like, "Hey, do you ever get weird vibes from that basement laundry room?" She laughed. "It's creepy as hell down there, but nothing's ever happened," she said with a shrug. "It's just old." I let it go, didn't push the topic. But after that, I started locking my door religiously, even during the day. I stopped using my balcony too. I didn't want to risk running into him again. Just the idea of seeing him out there, smoking and staring like before, made my stomach twist. 2 days later, everything changed. There were cops all over the building. I saw flashing lights through the blinds and pulled them open just in time to watch them escort someone out in handcuffs. At first, I didn't recognize him. His head was down. Then he looked up for a second and it hit me. It was him, my upstairs neighbor, the same man who'd been standing silently in the laundry room doorway. I felt sick. I didn't even know what had happened yet, but my gut was already tying itself into knots. Later that day, I went out and overheard a group of tenants talking near the mailboxes. One of them, a woman from the next building over, told me a girl had been attacked that morning, in the laundry room, same one I'd been in. She was okay, shaken but alive. She'd gone down early, around 6 a.m., and he was waiting down there, hiding. She fought him off and ran upstairs for help. That could have been me. When more details came out, it got worse. So much worse. He wasn't even supposed to be living in the building. The unit he was staying in had been marked vacant in the system. No lease, no record. Somehow, he'd slipped through the cracks and had been living there for months. No one knew how he got in. No one knew how he was paying for anything. But he'd been watching people. Maintenance found a hole. drilled clean through the floor of his apartment, directly above the laundry room. A peephole. He had been crouching there, watching. Just thinking about it makes my skin crawl. The image of him kneeling on that floor, staring through that hole in the dark, waiting for someone to come down alone. It's something I still can't shake. It makes my throat tighten every time I let myself picture it. And I keep thinking, if I hadn't faked that phone call, if I'd frozen, if I'd said nothing, if I hadn't walked away as fast as I did, what would have happened? He didn't say a single word that night, not one. Just that blank, locked-on stare, like I was already part of something, already inside the trap. It didn't feel like a guy caught off guard. It felt like a plan that had already started, and I got out before it finished. That's what messes with me the most. People always imagine danger being loud, yelling, breaking glass, footsteps pounding behind you. But this was silent, slow, intentional, like I'd walked into a scene that had been set just for me, and I barely got out in time. The police never gave us many details, just that he had a record, mostly trespassing, one older assault charge. Nothing that screamed serial predator, but enough to make you wonder how many other times he'd gotten close, how many other people he'd watched. After he was arrested, neighbors started sharing stories. Weird things we'd all brushed off. Clothes missing from dryers, lights that didn't work, doors left open. All the little things that seemed like nothing until they weren't. Looking back, it felt like he was testing the waters, seeing how much he could get away with before going further. That's what scares me the most. How easy it is to overlook warning signs when they're wrapped in everyday life. When they're quiet. When no one screams. I moved out a month later. I didn't care that he was gone. I couldn't stay there. Every creak from the ceiling above me made my chest tighten. I started avoiding any shared space. The mailroom, the trash chute, even the parking lot. I still live in Salt Lake, but my new place has in-unit laundry. That was non-negotiable. And no basements. Ever again. Even now, I catch myself checking over my shoulder in stairwells and parking garages. That kind of fear doesn't just leave. It settles in you, gets into your muscle memory. You don't even realize how tense you are until you're somewhere safe. And that doesn't happen often anymore. Not really. And the weirdest part? After everything that happened, part of me still wonders what he was doing that night in the laundry room. Just standing there in the dark. Why didn't he do anything? Was I too early? Did I interrupt something? Was he waiting for someone else? I'll never know. The police never told us much. He never said a single word. Not when they arrested him. Not in court. Nothing. That's what haunts me. How it all just stopped. Like whatever was supposed to happen didn't. Like I escaped it by inches. But it was close. Way too close. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to download a dating app, but loneliness does strange things to you. Back in the late 1990s, it wasn't even apps yet, just glitchy websites, clunky message boards, chat rooms where you prayed the person on the other end wasn't a 40-year-old man pretending to be someone else. But I was 19, freshly out of high school, still fumbling to figure out who the hell I was. A little backstory. I grew up in a small town outside Dayton, Ohio. My parents divorced when I was 12, and I spent most of my teens bouncing between mom's house and dad's one-bedroom apartment that always smelled faintly of cigarette smoke and takeout. I wasn't popular in school. I was that quiet girl in oversized sweaters, the one who wrote bad poetry in the margins of her math homework and kept her head down in the hallways. When graduation came, most of my friends left for universities out of state, chasing futures, dorm rooms and new lives while I stayed behind, working late shifts at a grocery store and saving for community college. I told myself it was temporary, but deep down I wanted more. I wanted someone who actually saw me, That's when I stumbled across a website called True Match. It was clunky as hell. Profiles looked like badly formatted resumes, and photos took ages to load on dial-up. Still, it felt like magic, a way to find people by interests, not just by whoever happened to make eye contact in the frozen food aisle. That's how I met Aaron Pierce. He said he was 21 at first, later 23. Eventually, I realized the number shifted depending on who was asking. His photo showed him leaning against a car, leather jacket, lazy grin, the kind of smirk that made my stomach flip back then. His messages came smooth, confident, a little too confident, but I was so hungry for attention I ignored the warning bells. The first time we met in person, I was 15. He picked me up at a gas station near my mom's house because I didn't want her to see. Looking back, that should have been the first red flag, a grown man insisting on secrecy. But at the time I told myself it was romantic, like some forbidden love story. We became this strange on and off summer thing. He'd vanish for months, then reappear with an apology and a smile that made me forget why I was angry in the first place. Nothing serious, not until my senior year. It was December, snow piled high against the curbs. I was walking home from my after-school job when his car slowed beside me. "Hop in, Maddie," he said, rolling down the window. His voice had this smoothness, like honey poured over glass. That night, parked beneath a flickering streetlight, he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes. God, I wish I could go back and shake that girl, tell her to run. By the time I turned 18, Aaron had convinced me to move in with him. "It'll be easier," he said. "We'll build a life together." I thought that meant partnership, someone to share bills with, laugh with, grow with. But what it really meant was me working 2 jobs, stocking shelves by day and waiting tables by night, while he quit every job he ever got after a week, claiming the bosses are all out to get me. The first fight was over something stupid, a dress I wore to class once. He accused me of showing off for other guys. When I tried to laugh it off, he grabbed my wrist so hard it left a bruise. Then he cried afterwards, saying, "I just love you too much, Maddie. I can't stand the thought of losing you." And I forgave him, over and over, until forgiveness became survival. When our son Eli was born, I thought maybe things would change. Aaron cried when he held him for the first time, kissed my forehead, swore he'd do better. And for a while he did. He'd wake for late-night feedings, sing lullabies off-key, whisper that we were a real family now. But sweetness never lasted with Aaron. The cruelty crept back in. First the words, then the hands. A slap here, a shove there, then the choking. His fingers tight around my throat whenever I said something he didn't like. He'd always apologize after, whispering, "You know I'd never really hurt you, Maddie. You just make me so mad sometimes," except he did hurt me, again and again, until parts of me stopped feeling anything at all. It was February, the kind of bitter cold that made the windows rattle and the pipes groan. Aaron came home late that night and with a friend. I'll call him Tyler. I was sitting on the carpet with Eli, stacking bright plastic blocks, his laughter filling the room each time he knocked them over. The air smelled faintly of applesauce and baby shampoo. For a moment, life almost felt normal, until the door creaked open. Aaron walked in, the sharp scent of beer hitting me before his voice did. "Hey, babe," he called out too loudly, dropping his coat on the floor. "Look who I brought." Behind him stood Tyler, awkward smile tugging at his lips. He looked nervous, like he already knew what kind of man Aaron really was. At first, everything seemed fine. They cracked open a couple of beers, shared laughs about some inside joke I didn't understand. I stayed quiet, keeping Eli close, my stomach tightening with that familiar dread. Then Aaron's tone shifted, too sweet, dripping with sarcasm. "So, Maddie," he said, leaning against the counter. "You like having the house to yourself, huh? Bet you don't miss me at all when I'm gone." My heart skipped. That voice, honeyed and cold, always came right before the storm. "I didn't say that," I whispered, my fingers trembling against Eli's back. Tyler shifted uneasily. "Man, chill out." She didn't mean anything by it. Aaron ignored him. His eyes locked on me, his smile stretching thin and cruel. "You think I'm stupid? You think I don't see the way guys look at you?" "Aaron, please," I murmured, desperate to keep my voice calm. "Not tonight." "The baby—" "Shut up," he snapped. Then lower, darker. "I'll beat you like a man." My throat closed. I clutched Eli tighter, whispering, "Please don't, please." Aaron's eyes flicked to Tyler. "Take the kid." I froze. But I knew, God, I knew, Eli would be safer in Tyler's arms than mine. My hands shook as I passed him over. "Please," I whispered to Tyler, barely breathing. "Just keep him safe." The second Eli was gone, Aaron lunged. His fist tangled in my hair, yanking me to the ground. Pain bloomed white-hot as his knuckles met my face again and again. I tasted blood, warm and metallic, spilling down my chin. I crawled toward the phone on the side table, every movement slow and clumsy, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. I made it to the second digit before Aaron ripped the receiver away and smashed it into my cheek. "You call the cops on me?" he roared, his face twisted, eyes wild. "I'll kill you, Maddie. Do you hear me? I'll kill you and not think twice." His hands clamped around my throat. My vision swam, darkness blooming at the edges. My lungs screamed for air. Through the blur, I saw Tyler frozen, clutching Eli tight, terror etched across his face. "Go," I croaked. "Get help," but Aaron barked, "You move, I kill you both." I stopped struggling. A strange calm washed over me. This was it, I thought. He's really going to do it, then pounding. Loud, urgent, "Police!" Aaron froze. His chest heaved as he glared down at me. "Don't you say a word," he hissed, then straightened, wiping sweat from his face. He opened the door. "Evening, sir," one of the officers said. "We got a hang-up call from this number. Everything all right?" Yeah, Aaron replied smoothly, too smoothly. Baby was crying. My girl just overreacted. I stumbled into view. Blood streamed from my split lip. One eye was already swelling shut. The officer's face hardened. "Ma'am, are you okay?" That was all it took. The cops pushed past Aaron, forcing him against the wall while another helped me sit down. "You're safe now," he said softly, but I didn't feel safe. Not yet. At the hospital, one officer lingered by my bed, voice low. "I've seen a lot of injuries in this job," he said. "Yours? It's a miracle you're alive." Aaron was arrested that night. From jail, he called me, his voice calm, almost casual. "Why'd you do this to me, Maddie?" he asked. Not an apology, not anger, just disbelief that I'd finally stopped protecting him. He was sentenced to 26 days in jail. 26, that was all. But before he could serve them, he vanished. For months, he stalked me, blocked numbers, strange cars outside my work, the sensation of being watched no matter where I went. I lived in constant fear, jumping at shadows, sleeping with the lights on. Then one day the calls stopped. I found out later why. He'd moved on, to another woman. I tried to warn her. God, I tried. She didn't believe me. And one night, she didn't survive. He strangled her in her apartment, just like he'd promised he'd do to me. Aaron Pierce is in prison now. Life sentence. No parole. And even though I know he can't touch me anymore, I still wake some nights gasping, my throat burning with the memory of his hands. I live with guilt. Guilt that I survived and she didn't. That my silence in those early years might have let him keep hurting women. But I also live with relief. Relief that Eli never saw me die on that living room floor. Relief that, for once, the police arrived in time. Relief that I'm still here to tell this story. Because if I hadn't left him when I did, I know, without a single doubt, it would have been me. I never thought I'd actually download Tinder. It always seemed like one of those apps people joked about, but secretly judged you for using. I grew up in a small city called Riverton, where gossip travels faster than the morning church bells. You can't grab milk without running into someone who remembers your middle school braces. That's part of why leaving for college felt like freedom. Finally, a chance to exist without every move being dissected. I'm 19 now, a freshman at Ashwood University, a mid-sized campus tucked into the hills about an hour from home. College has been exactly what people said it would be. Late-night study sessions that blur into sunrise, cheap ramen eaten straight from the pot, and endless roommate conversations about everything from mascara hacks to who's secretly hooking up with who. For context, I've always been the kind of girl people notice even when I don't want them to. In high school, guys asked me out for bragging rights and some girls hated me on sight. I'm not being conceited, it's just the truth. My mom used to warn me, "You need to be careful, Ava. People will want things from you just because of how you look." I'd laugh it off every time. She worried too much. It all started one Thursday night in our dorm. Hannah and Jess, my roommates, were sprawled on the futon, scrolling through their phones while I sat hunched at my desk finishing an essay. "Ava," Hannah blurted, grinning, "you would kill it on Tinder." I laughed without looking up. "Please, that's literally the last thing I need." "No, I'm serious," Jess said, tossing me her phone. "Look at these creeps messaging me. Half can't spell and the rest think dog filter selfies are hot. You'd probably get 100 matches in an hour." "Not interested," I muttered, fingers still clacking on the keyboard. They didn't drop it. For 30 relentless minutes, they teased and pleaded until Hannah finally snatched my phone, downloaded the app herself, and started swiping through my Instagram for photos. She picked one of me in a yellow sundress, one with smoky eye makeup, and one laughing at a coffee shop. Within minutes of going live, my phone began buzzing nonstop. "See?" Jess grinned. "Told you. You're the hot one." I rolled my eyes but couldn't help laughing as the notifications piled in. Some messages were cliché. "Hey gorgeous, those eyes though, wid tonight?" Others were disgusting. I ignored most of them. But swiping through became a nightly game. Mocking bios, rating selfies, joking about which guy looked like he lived in his mom's basement or had a secret family in Idaho. It felt harmless, silly fun, until 2 nights later. That's when I got a message from a profile named Bleeding Muse. No photo, just a black and white sketch of a rose dripping what looked like ink. His bio was blank except for one sentence. His first message read, "I saw you. You're brighter than the moon and darker than sin." I laughed out loud. What is this? A Hot Topic poem from 2007? Hannah leaned over my shoulder. "Oh my God, Ava, that's so cringe. Block him." But something about it, its weird confidence, made me pause. I typed back, "Smooth." "You write that in every girl's DMs?" The reply came instantly. "No, only you." That should have been the red flag. Instant replies. Too intense. But instead I showed Jess and we joked about how desperate he sounded. I didn't block him. Over the next few days he sent paragraphs, melodramatic poetry, bleeding metaphors, sketches he claimed to draw himself. One was of a girl with long hair standing beneath a streetlight. The caption said, "She doesn't see me, but I see her." "Creepy," I muttered, tossing my phone onto the futon. "Tell him to chill," Hannah said, half laughing. It turned into a weird form of entertainment. I'd read his over-the-top messages in a fake, sultry voice while Jess and Hannah cackled. Just some angsty wannabe artist, we figured. Then the drawings got darker. One night, he sent a photo of a crumpled piece of paper covered in smeared writing. My name scrawled over and over in something reddish-brown. "Looks like fake blood," I said uneasily. Jess frowned. "Ava, that's not funny anymore. You need to unmatch him." Oh, I did. I unmatched him and deleted the chat. I thought that was it. It wasn't. The next evening, my WhatsApp buzzed. Unknown number. One message. It was him. Same username. Same style. Same sick poetry. "Do you know how crazy I am for you?" I'd bleed just to prove it. I froze. My throat went dry. How the hell did he get my number? Hannah glanced over my shoulder, color draining from her face. "Ava, delete that now." But I didn't. Maybe it was anger. Maybe fear disguised as defiance. Maybe I just needed to feel like I still had control. I typed back before I could talk myself out of it. "I bet you aren't man enough to actually show your face. Loser." I hit send when 5 minutes later, the doorbell rang. It was 12:34 a.m. I wasn't even supposed to be at the dorm. Campus was empty for the holidays and I'd gone home, alone. My mom was away on a work trip, her suitcase still by the front door. The sound of the chime echoing through the quiet house made my blood run cold. I moved down the stairs barefoot, heart pounding so loud it filled the silence. The old steps creaked under my weight. I hesitated at the door, breath trembling, and leaned toward the peephole. No one. Just the porch light cutting through the fog. I let out a shaky exhale. It's fine, I told myself. Maybe a package, maybe a random delivery. I unlocked the door and opened it just a crack. Cold air hit my skin. No person, no car, nothing, just the distant hum of crickets. Then I looked down. A red envelope lay on the doormat. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. It smelled metallic, sharp, sour like rusted pennies. Inside was a single folded paper, the words jagged, written in something thick and brownish red. "Did you miss me?" I slammed the door and twisted the lock, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I think someone's stalking me, I whispered, tears burning my eyes. He was outside. He left me something. The dispatcher's voice was calm but firm. Stay on the line with me, ma'am. Can you move to a safe part of the house? I backed away from the door, turning off every light one by one, hoping whoever was out there would think the house was empty. My chest ached from how hard I was breathing. I strained to hear any movement, any breath that wasn't mine. Then I made the worst mistake of my life. I peeked through the kitchen window into the backyard. He was there. A man stood in the middle of the yard, shirtless, motionless, his body pale in the moonlight. His eyes were locked on mine. My knees almost gave out. I grabbed the nearest flashlight and flicked it on, the beam shaking in my trembling hand. It hit his chest first, and I saw it. My name, Ava, carved into his skin. Fresh blood oozed from the letters, running down his torso like red tears. I couldn't breathe. Slowly, I moved the light upward to his face, and my stomach dropped into nothing. It wasn't a stranger. It was Mark, my childhood best friend's stepdad, the same man who used to drive us to soccer practice. The same one who once hugged me too long, the same one who once commented on my Instagram, "Beautiful, just like your mom." He smiled now, wide, unnatural, proud, like a kid showing off something he'd made just for me. I dropped the flashlight, screamed. I ran upstairs, slammed my bedroom door and locked it, pressing myself into the corner with the phone still in my hand. "Ma'am, stay calm," the dispatcher said through the speaker. "Officers are on the way. Don't open the door for anyone but the police." I sat there shaking, listening, counting every breath. It felt like hours before I finally heard the sirens. When the police arrived, they searched the yard. He was gone. All they found were bloody footprints leading into the woods behind our house. I gave them everything: the Tinder screenshots, the WhatsApp messages, the red envelope. They investigated, but nothing tied directly to Mark. The profile was deleted, the number untraceable. When they went to question him, they found out he'd quit his job months earlier, left his family, disappeared. My childhood best friend won't even look at me now. Her mom swears she didn't know. It's been weeks. I still check every lock twice before bed. Every creak makes my heart stutter. A few nights ago, I woke to scratching at my window, faint, deliberate. When I looked out, I swear I saw a shadow move away. The next morning, there was a white rose on the porch, its petals soaked in blood. Tied to it was a note: "The blood may fade, but I never will." This weekend, I'm filing for a restraining order. My mom begged the police to keep watch to arrest him if he resurfaces, but I know he's out there watching, waiting. And every night, I wonder if the next knock at my door will be the last sound I ever hear. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to meet someone off an app, but then again, I never thought I'd be single at 32 either. Life has a way of gut-punching your ego when you least expect it. Just 6 months ago, I was sharing an apartment with my girlfriend of 4 years, Julia, in a quieter corner of Cleveland, not far from Lake Erie. I thought we were building something real, marriage, maybe even kids. But when you live with someone long enough, the cracks don't stay hidden. For Julia, my long hours in IT were the problem. For me, it was the way she started drifting. Late nights at the office. A new perfume, no, not perfume, cologne, faint but distinct, not mine. The night she finally admitted she'd been seeing her coworker friend, I didn't yell or throw things. I just packed a duffel, grabbed my laptop, and moved into a one-bedroom rental across town. Wasn't heartbroken in the movie sense. No tear-stained ice cream nights or sad playlists echoing through empty rooms. But there was this quiet hollowness. Nights especially were brutal. That's how Tinder happened. At first, I told myself it was just for distraction. Swipe left, swipe right, trade a few dry jokes, maybe grab a drink if conversation didn't crash. I wasn't looking for anything serious, just something that made me feel like a person again, not a failure collecting dust. Most of the women I met felt the same. Drinks, laughter, polite goodbyes, nothing that stuck. Then, about 4 months ago, I matched with Elena. Her profile stopped me mid-scroll. Not because she was model gorgeous, but because her photos had soul. None of the usual mirror poses or vacation selfies. They looked intentional, like someone behind the lens actually felt something. One shot caught her laughing at a street fair, lights blurring behind her. Another showed her silhouette against the lake at dusk. The last was black and white. Elena in a cafe, chin on her hand, eyes lost somewhere beyond the glass. Her bio was simple. Writer. Coffee addict. Lover of black and white photography. Always chasing stories. That last line hooked me. Chasing stories. We matched on a Tuesday night. Me. So, who takes your pictures? You've got a good eye. Elena. Guilty. Self-timer and stubborn patience. Photography's my therapy. Me. Seriously? Self-timer? They look like magazine covers. Elena. That's the goal. The conversation flowed easily. No half-hearted emojis or one-word replies. She asked questions, teased me, shared stories about her favorite authors, even wanted to know my worst client horror story in IT. For the first time in months, I caught myself grinning at my phone like an idiot. By Thursday, she invited me to dinner at her apartment. I hesitated. Meeting someone in their home for a first date wasn't exactly textbook safe, but then she said she wanted to show me some of her unpublished work. Photos I never post online. I don't let just anyone see them, she wrote. But you seem like someone who'd understand. I don't know if it was curiosity or flattery that won, but I agreed. It was a cold Saturday evening when I drove across town. Elena lived in an older brick building near Lakewood, the kind with narrow halls and faint smells of other people's dinners clinging to the air. Onions, curry, old carpet cleaner. I double-checked the address she'd sent, surprised. The place looked so ordinary it was almost invisible. She buzzed me in. When I reached her floor, the door was already cracked open. Elena stood there smiling. She was shorter than I expected, with shoulder-length dark hair tucked behind her ears and a long cardigan draped around her frame. "You made it," she said warmly. Her voice was soft, steady, with that calm confidence people either fake or are born with. "Of course," I said, smiling. Couldn't pass up the chance for a home-cooked meal. She laughed, quiet, unforced. "Let's hope it's edible." Inside, her apartment was spotless, minimalist to the point of unnerving. White walls, black furniture, a couple of green plants near the window, each one perfectly symmetrical like part of a set. But what really filled the space were the photos. Black frames lined every wall, dozens of black and white portraits. Not the playful, soft ones from her profile. These were raw, intimate. Each face caught mid-emotion like the moment before a confession. Some smiled faintly. Others looked startled, haunted even. There was something unsettling about how close the camera seemed to have been. I remember standing there, my breath catching, realizing that every photo seemed to look back. One photo showed a man smoking alone on a porch, the shadows slicing across his face like bars. Another was of a woman brushing her teeth, caught mid-motion, toothpaste foam spilling over her lips. A child sleeping on a sofa, a blanket half slipped to the floor, then one that made me pause. An older woman at her vanity, half-dressed, frozen mid-expression, like she'd just heard something behind her. "Wow," I said, trying to sound casual even as something in my gut tightened. "Your models really know how to pose. Looks so natural." Elena smiled faintly, tilting her head. "They're not models." I let out a small laugh, waiting for the punchline that didn't come. "Wait, seriously? Then how do you capture moments like this?" "Through windows," she said simply. The words hung there, light as dust. "Secretly," she added, her voice calm, steady, like she was describing a recipe. "People are their most honest when they don't know they're being watched." For a second, I just stared at her, searching her face for a smirk, any hint of irony. There wasn't one. Her eyes stayed on mine, steady, proud. I forced a laugh that sounded too high, too thin. "That's risky." "It's worth it," she said, sipping her wine. "Real emotion can't be posed. Fear, trust, loneliness. They only exist when someone thinks they're alone." A chill crawled slowly up my spine. Still, I followed her to the small dining table. She poured the wine, deep red, fragrant, and served pasta in delicate white bowls. The smell was rich and buttery, but my appetite was gone. The photos seemed to press in from every wall, each pair of eyes watching, silent and knowing. Elena talked easily, like nothing was wrong. "So," she asked between bites, "do you have family here?" "Not really," I said, swirling my wine but not drinking. "Favorite movie?" Zodiac, probably." "I like mystery." Her lips curved slightly. "Me too." Her gaze drifted past me again, not quite at me. More like she was studying the light hitting my face. My pulse kicked up. "Has anyone ever caught you?" I asked, forcing a casual tone. "Once," she said after a pause. She took a slow sip, her expression softening into something almost nostalgic. She was furious, but I apologized and made it up to her. "How?" I asked before I could stop myself. She smiled, gentle, secretive. "It doesn't matter." My gut screamed to get out. I thanked her for dinner, mumbling something about an early morning. I stood, but before I could reach the door, she stepped in front of it, quiet, graceful, her hand on the knob. "Wait," she said softly. "Before you go, I want to show you my masterpiece." My stomach twisted. She turned and walked down a narrow hallway, motioning for me to follow. I hesitated, then slipped the fork from the table into my sleeve. Ridiculous, but it made me feel less helpless. At the end of the hall stood a locked door. Elena pulled a small key from her cardigan pocket. Even before the lock turned, a rancid smell leaked through, thick, chemical, and sweet like rotting flowers. When the door creaked open, the world tilted. A dim yellow bulb swung overhead, casting a sickly cone of light. In the center of the room sat a wooden chair, and on it, a woman. For a second, I thought she was alive. She sat perfectly upright, wearing a red swimsuit, her eyes wide open. But her skin, oh God, her skin was gray and taut, her limbs puffed and veined like marble. Her jaw twitched, and for one awful heartbeat, I thought she was about to speak. Then her mouth fell open, and a stream of maggots spilled onto the floor. I dropped the fork. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" Elena whispered behind me. Her voice trembled, not with fear but pride. "I watched her for weeks before I took her. Look at that expression, fear and trust captured forever." My throat closed. My brain clawed for any rational explanation. A wax model, a film prop, something. But the stench was real. The low buzz of flies was real. The slow drip of fluid hitting the tile was real. Then, with a faint wet sound, a piece of the woman's cheek sloughed off and slid down her face like damp paper. I screamed. Elena grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Don't be scared," she said quickly. "I can fix her. I'll glue it up. You understand me, don't you?" I tore free and bolted. I don't remember the hallway or the stairs, just the taste of bile and the sound of my heartbeat roaring in my ears. I burst into the street, gasping, waving at the headlights of a passing car. A couple pulled over as I screamed for help. The police arrived minutes later. They stormed the apartment, but Elena was gone. The woman's body was still there. The photos still lined the walls. My half-eaten plate of pasta sat untouched on the table. Neighbors said she'd only lived there a few months. Paid cash, kept to herself. No one knew her real name. The police searched for weeks, nothing. A month later, I got a small package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single black and white photograph. It was me, sitting at a cafe with my co-worker. Taken through the window. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to meet someone off a dating app. 2 years earlier, I would have laughed and said I wasn't that desperate. But by September 2022, I was living in a small Minnesota town called Pine Grove, where nothing ever happened, and everyone already knew everyone else's business. I was 16 then, a restless high school junior, tired of the same hallways, the same faces, the same conversations. My parents were strict but not unfair, the kind of strict that comes from love. My mom worked night shifts at the local hospital. My dad was a contractor who left before sunrise most days. They trusted me because I'd never given them a reason not to. My grades were fine, I worked weekends at a coffee shop, and I wasn't into parties. But as the summer faded and school started again, something hollow settled inside me. Everyone around me had someone. A boyfriend, a crush, late-night texts that made them smile at their phones. I wanted that too. That's how I ended up downloading an app called True Match. At first, it was awkward. Most of the guys were from nearby towns, too pushy, too weird, or only after one thing. I almost deleted it. Then I matched with a boy named Tyler Reeves. 17. Lived one town over in Milford. Said he'd left high school early and was taking classes at the local community college. His profile was simple: sitting on a porch with a dog, leaning against a car, one mirror selfie in a hoodie. Average. Maybe a little shy. But his messages were what caught me. The first thing he wrote wasn't "Hey" or "You're cute." It was, "You look like someone who listens before they speak." That's rare, am I right? I laughed out loud when I read it. It was oddly specific, kind of dorky. "Maybe," I replied. "Or maybe I just don't like wasting words." "Then I already like you," he sent back. Most girls just ghost or send emojis, and somehow that was the start. We talked more. He said he'd actually gone to Pine Grove High for a year before transferring after some drama with teachers. When I asked what kind of drama, he admitted he'd been caught borrowing essays online. Plagiarism, basically. But he laughed it off, said it wasn't serious. Something about that didn't sit right. Schools don't usually expel people for harmless mistakes, but I let it slide. Tyler started offering to pick me up after my cafe shifts. I didn't have a license yet, and he said he liked keeping me company. At first, it felt almost brotherly. He joked, told dumb stories, bought me milkshakes. Once, he even showed up during a thunderstorm to drive me home so I wouldn't have to walk. But the way he looked at me sometimes, it wasn't brotherly. By late September, the air turned sharp with cold, the trees bleeding red and orange along the streets of Pine Grove. A girl from school, Brianna, threw a big house party while her parents were gone. Everyone was going, even the quiet ones. I almost didn't. But Tyler texted, "Come with me, I'll drive." That night, when his car pulled up outside my house, he smiled through the window. "You look amazing." I glanced down at my outfit, just jeans and a jacket. "It's nothing fancy." "Trust me," he said softly. "You don't need fancy." The party was chaos, music shaking the walls, bodies pressed together, the air thick with beer and perfume. I spent most of it in the kitchen chatting with friends while Tyler hovered nearby. He didn't drink, said he liked to stay clear-headed. I thought that was mature at first, until I realized his eyes never left me. Every time I turned, he was already watching. When things finally started winding down, I found him by the door. "Can you give me a ride home?" I asked. His answer came too fast. "Of course." The drive home was quiet at first. Just the hum of the tires on the cold asphalt and the faint crackle of the radio. My breath fogged the passenger window. The silence pressed between us until Tyler's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Hey, listen," he said, his tone softer than usual. "I think you and I should go out sometime." My stomach dropped. I'd been waiting for this. "Tyler," I tried to sound kind. "I'm sorry. I just don't feel that way. I really like hanging out with you, but only as friends." His jaw flexed, a muscle ticking just below his temple. "Friends? Huh. After everything I've done for you, all those rides, all that time, I never asked for... I offered you gas money, remember?" I cut in quickly. "You insisted on helping." He looked at me then, half hurt, half angry. For a moment I thought he might say something cruel, but instead he forced a thin smile. "Right. No worries, friends." I exhaled, relief and guilt tangling inside me. "Thanks for the ride," I murmured, slipping out of the car. Inside, the house was dark and still. My parents were asleep. I changed into pajamas, brushed my teeth, and crawled into bed. Exhaustion pulling at me. I'd just closed my eyes when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from a girl I barely knew, someone who'd been at the party. My pulse quickened as I opened it. It was a long paragraph. "Hey, I don't know you well, but I thought you should know Tyler's been bragging tonight. He showed people photos of you sleeping." I froze. Then came the images, screenshots. My room. My bed, me lying there unaware. Taken through my window. A cold wave rushed through me. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. I turned toward my window. The blinds were open. The latch unlocked. He could have been standing out there, watching me whenever he wanted. My hands shook as I typed, fingers trembling over the screen. Me. Never contact me again. Almost instantly, his reply appeared. "Tyler, wait, you don't understand. I wasn't trying to scare you. I just wanted to keep you safe. Watching you sleep, it felt peaceful." I stared at the words, my throat dry. Then I typed back each letter hard and sharp. Me, lose my number. Don't ever speak to me again. I hit block and threw my phone onto the bed. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. Eventually, I must have drifted off, because the next thing I remember was the sound of shattering glass. I jolted upright. My room was dark except for the pale light of the street lamp filtering in through a hole where my window used to be. A shadow stepped through, shards crunching beneath his shoes. "You've got to be kidding me," I gasped, scrambling out of bed. The figure lunged. His foot slipped on the glass, sending him forward, and that's when I saw it, the knife glinting in his hand. "Tyler," I whispered, my voice cracking. My throat felt like it was closing. He pushed himself up, eyes wild, breath ragged. "You weren't supposed to find out like this," he rasped. "We were supposed to be together." I screamed and bolted for the hallway. He came after me, but the fall had slowed him. My dad's door flew open. "What the hell's going on?" he shouted, blinking into the dark. "It's him," I screamed. "It's Tyler, he's in my room, he's got a knife." Dad didn't hesitate. He charged past me, slamming into my room. The light flicked on. The window gaped open. Tyler was gone. The police arrived within 10 minutes, sirens cutting through the night. Paramedics, too. It wasn't until they wrapped my feet that I realized I was bleeding. The glass had sliced them open. My skin was cold, my words jumbled as I tried to explain. At the hospital, I learned he'd vanished into the woods. A week later, they found him hiding at his uncle's cabin. In court, he sat there, hands cuffed, eyes hollow, and said, "I don't know why I did it. I loved her." The prosecutor showed everything. The photos, the messages, the knife, the shattered window. The things he'd said at the party. The jury didn't take long. "Guilty. Breaking and entering, stalking, attempted first-degree murder." Later, his lawyers appealed. They said he had mental health issues, that his clean record made him less dangerous. The murder charge was reduced. 16 years. It's been 3. I moved away from Pine Grove. I don't use dating apps. I don't even trust new people. Still, sometimes lying in bed, I feel it, the weight of unseen eyes. The hairs on my neck rise, and I hear that faint echo of glass breaking like it's happening again. I know he's behind bars, but part of me is still frozen in that moment, standing barefoot in the shards, realizing how close it came. And sometimes I can't stop wondering, if I hadn't rejected him that night, would he have done it anyway? All I know is I survived. I never pictured myself as someone who'd fall into the world of dating apps. But after the year I'd had, it almost felt inevitable. I was 25, freshly back in my hometown of Maplewood, Illinois. My 4-year relationship with my college boyfriend, Caleb, had just imploded, though truthfully, it had been rotting long before it died. For years I'd convinced myself that the jealousy, the subtle control, the long silences were just his way of loving me. That's how some people show they care, I used to tell myself, trying to make sense of the knots in my chest. But deep down I knew it wasn't love. It was ownership dressed as affection. The night everything broke was quiet, almost anticlimactic. I'd come home late from work, phone dead in my purse, and found him pacing the living room, eyes red, jaw tight. "Where were you?" he snapped. "My phone died," I said, still in my coat. "I told you I had a late shift." "Don't lie to me," he hissed. "Who were you with?" When I realized he'd tried to track me and panicked because my location had gone dark, something in me cracked. I remember locking myself in the bathroom, sitting on the cold tile floor, shaking, tears dripping onto my knees. The faint smell of his cologne lingering in the air like smoke. That was the moment I understood. Love shouldn't feel like suffocation. Leaving him was brutal. The kind of breakup that drains the air from your lungs and leaves your apartment full of ghosts. But I managed. What came after, the emptiness, was worse. My friends had drifted off into marriages, new cities, careers. I'd just finished my communications degree and landed a decent marketing job downtown. But the silence that greeted me every night felt endless. The evenings were the hardest. I'd curl up in bed, blue light washing over my face, scrolling through my phone until my eyes burned, wondering if I'd ever find someone who didn't make me feel small. That's when I downloaded the apps. At first it was curiosity. Tinder, Bumble, Hinge. Then it became habit. Swipe left, swipe right. Tiny flares of interest that died before they burned. The late night "you up?" messages made me roll my eyes, but I kept going. There was this quiet hunger for connection I couldn't shut off. That's how I found Ryan Matthews. His profile was normal, refreshingly so. A couple of clean-cut photos. One hiking in the Smoky Mountains, one at a rooftop bar with friends, and another holding a golden retriever puppy. His bio read, 27 mechanical engineer. Love hiking, cooking, and live music. Looking for something real. No shirtless selfies. No cryptic one-liners. Just grounded. I swiped right. He matched instantly. Our first messages still make me smile when I think about them. Ryan. So, Ashley from Maplewood, you strike me as a brownies over cookies kind of person. Am I wrong? Me. Wow, bold assumption. But you're right. Brownies all the way. Ryan. Knew it. Only true geniuses pick brownies. Me. Oh, really? And what makes you the brownie authority? Ryan. I make a mean triple chocolate brownie. Family recipe. Maybe I'll prove it someday. I remember laughing, really laughing, the kind that slips out before you can stop it. He wasn't trying too hard. He wasn't sleazy. Just easy to talk to. We texted for a week straight. Quick morning check-ins before work. Random midday updates, goodnight messages that somehow made the dark feel lighter. He told me about his job designing automotive parts. About weekend hikes, about his dog, the golden retriever, Milo. I told him about my love for trying new coffee shops. How I spent commutes binging true crime podcasts, and how I still hadn't figured out how to make friends again in Maplewood. It felt normal, comforting, familiar in a way that scared me a little. So when he suggested meeting up, I said yes, but that's where things started to shift. Ryan asked if he could come by my place. At first I froze. I'd never invited anyone from an app over before. The thought of a stranger in my home, the creak of the old floors under unfamiliar footsteps, made my stomach flutter with unease. I get it, he said over text. Totally respect boundaries, but if it helps I can bring coffee or dinner. Keep it low-key. No pressure. I stared at the message for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard. My parents were out of town for the weekend, the house quiet and still. Maybe too quiet. And part of me, the lonely part that was tired of waiting for something perfect, whispered that maybe this was fine. Maybe I was ready. I told myself I could always throw him out if he turned out weird, so I said yes. Saturday morning arrived with that brittle mix of nerves and a small, foolish excitement. I cleaned like someone trying to make a good impression on a life that might be over in an afternoon. Wiped counters until my hands tingled. Straightened the throw pillows, opened windows to let the late winter air in. I pulled on a light sweater and my favorite jeans and, because of that silly brownie banter, baked a tray of triple chocolate brownies. The house smelled warm and faintly of cocoa. It felt like a private joke that only two people would understand. At 2:45, I checked my phone. Ryan, leaving now. Be there in 15. At exactly 3, I heard the knock. My heart did that little stuttering thing, like it wanted to sprint through my ribs. I smoothed my sweater, inhaled, and opened the door. He was not Ryan. He was older, mid-30s maybe, and he wore his day on him. His work pants looked stained, sleeves dusted with the kind of grit that won't come out in one wash. His hair was greasy at the part, and his face had a fringe of unshaven stubble. He looked heavier than the photos, like someone who had stopped noticing the shape of his own shoulders. The light hit him wrong. He had an angerless, tired set to his jaw. He smiled, but it was crooked and thin. Hi, he said, forcing something meant to be friendly into his voice. He held the smile like a prop. Ashley, I managed, and for a second my brain scrambled for the script people use in situations that feel off. Who are you? I asked as carefully as I could, the kind of careful that tries not to sound like accusation. Ryan, he said fast, but then, after an odd little pause, he added, Well, my nephew helped me with the profile. Those are his pictures. I figured if I used mine, no one would swipe right. He chuckled, but it landed awkwardly, like a footstep in a room with no carpet. Every instinct in my body screamed to shut the door. My throat felt tight and my palms were suddenly hot, but I didn't slam it. I didn't call someone. I told myself I wasn't being rude. That escalating would make me look unstable, so I let him inside. We sat on the couch and I kept my body angled away, making myself small and distant at once. I offered him a brownie more out of some social reflex than hospitality. He took it but didn't eat it. He just held it, eyes trained on me in a way that felt less like looking and more like measuring. The TV murmured something about a morning show, but the sound blurred into the background of my own thoughts. I could feel the heat of the oven on my face, the tiny grit of sugar on my tongue from tasting batter, the faint citrus from the cleaner I'd used that morning. Everything smelled too domestic for how wrong the moment felt. I stood up and told myself I needed water. In the kitchen, I texted Lena with my thumbs that were suddenly clumsy. "Hey, guy came over. Doesn't look like his pics. Kind of sketch. We'll call you soon." I almost hit send before hesitating, convinced it was dramatic, then pressed send anyway because the message felt like a small lifeline. When I returned, he was closer to the edge of the couch, leaning forward, hands clasped between his knees as if in prayer. His eyes were fixed on me. He tilted his head and said softly, "You're even prettier in person." "Thanks," I said, because what else do you say to a compliment that lands like a warning? My smile was tight. There was a silence that folded over itself. His stare didn't break. It held until the air felt thin. I couldn't do it. I tried to be polite, to make some reasonable exit for both of us. "Listen, my parents are actually coming home soon, so you should probably head out," I said, voice a notch higher than usual, the way people do to force themselves to be heard in a crowded room. He sat for a long beat without moving. Then slowly he stood. "Sure," he said. "I get it." Relief floodlit my chest. I followed him to the door, fingers already curling around the knob, ready to shut the world out behind him. As he crossed the threshold, he reached into his pocket and pulled something small out. For a second, it was just metal flashing in the light, a glint like a lie under a smile. He unfolded a small folding knife and held it up so it caught the sunlight. "You know," he said, almost conversational, as if telling me the weather, "I could have killed you today." My breath hiccuped. My mouth went dry. Movement slowed to the viscous drag of a bad dream. He looked at me and then, unbelievably, he smiled. It was too casual, like the punchline of some private joke that I wasn't supposed to understand. "Kidding?" he added, laughing in a way that sounded like nails on a chalkboard. He turned and walked to an old pickup truck idling on the curb, climbed in, and drove away. The engine revved like an exhale. I stood in the doorway long after the taillights disappeared into the street, the cold evening air brushing my face. My hands were shaking so badly I fumbled with the lock, fingers clumsy, the click of the deadbolt sounding absurdly loud. That night, I did what people do when the world shifts under them. I deleted every dating app. I blocked his number. I sat in the hollow quiet of the house and realized, with a kind of stunned clarity, how close the afternoon had come to unthinkable violence. The brownies were still on the counter, cooling and untouched, and the smell of chocolate that had once felt cozy now pressed against my teeth like a warning. I kept replaying the moment over and over, his voice, the casual way he said it, the cold folding knife glinting against his thumb. Months later, the sentence still lives in the quiet rooms of my head. I hear it when I wake up in the middle of the night, when the house is full of the small noises of an empty place, the pipe settling, the refrigerator humming, the old floorboards complaining as if they remember his footsteps. I could have killed you today. The memory has weight. It sits across from me at the kitchen table, the way a loose tooth sits against your tongue. Impossible to ignore and always there. And somewhere deep and honest inside, I know he wasn't joking. I never imagined I'd be that guy, sitting in the dim blue glow of my phone at 2 a.m., thumb twitching across a dating app like it was muscle memory. 40 years old, a mid-level developer in tech, living alone in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Fairfield, Ohio. My days bled together, code reviews, meetings that could have been emails, microwave dinners, and late-night Reddit scrolls until the screen stung my eyes. I wasn't the kind of man who turned heads. I wasn't even the kind who got invited to gatherings anymore. The breakup that tipped me into this rut wasn't explosive or cinematic. Elena, my partner of 5 years, had waited until after dinner. I still remember the sound of the fork settling against her plate. She took a slow breath and said my name in that careful practice tone people use when they've rehearsed pain. "Mark," she began softly. "I can't keep doing this. It feels like we're roommates who split bills, not partners who share a life." I stared down at my half-eaten pasta, watching steam fade into nothing. My throat felt tight, she sighed. "I've been patient, but you don't really let me in. I want more than this quiet half-love. I deserve it." There wasn't any shouting, no tears, just the unbearable silence of something ending gently. Over the next few weeks, she packed her things methodically, her sweaters disappearing from drawers, her toothbrush gone from the sink. By the time the last box left, the apartment felt too big, too clean. Nights were the worst. The bed felt like a stage with half the cast missing. Loneliness doesn't slam into you, it seeps. It trickles into the pauses between Netflix episodes, the empty chair at breakfast. The moment you realize one toothbrush will now last you months. That's when I downloaded Tinder. I told myself it was just to talk. Not to find love, not to rebound, just to feel seen by another voice that wasn't my cat or the cashier at Kroger. At first, it was robotic. Swipe left, swipe right, send a polite hey that fizzled into silence. Then came Clara. She was 35, auburn hair grazing her shoulders, freckles scattered across her cheeks, and a smile that looked alive, unfiltered. Her bio said she loved old jazz records, collected antique clocks, and cared for her paralyzed grandfather on their family farm. Something about that felt real, earthy, grounded. Our first chat started playfully. "Clara, okay, important question. If you could eat only one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?" Me, "Easy, pasta, it's cheap, filling, and hard to ruin." Clara, "Stew. My grandpa swears by it. Says it's the only real food left in this world. Maybe I'll make it for you sometime. I'd like that. I don't think anyone's ever made me stew before." Clara, "Then you're long overdue." She was funny, quick, warm. She didn't send dry one-liners. She actually wanted to know me. She asked about my job even after I warned her it was all screens and debugging. When I sent her a picture of Juniper, my cat tangled in a paper bag, she replied, "That cat looks smarter than most people I know." We met twice before things began to feel serious. The first date was coffee downtown. She showed up in a green coat with one button missing, hair wind-blown, laughing with her whole face. The second was a quiet walk along the river. She talked about losing her mother young, being raised by her grandfather, and how the countryside made her feel both safe and trapped. By the third week, she called me one night. "Come out Saturday," she said, her voice soft but buzzing with excitement. "I'll cook. You've been eating frozen dinners, haven't you?" I laughed. Guilty. "Then you'll finally have real food," she teased. "But it has to be at my place. I can't leave Grandpa alone at night." There was a small pause, a flicker of hesitation I ignored. It was fast, sure, but after months of numb quiet, warmth felt worth the risk. Her farmhouse sat 20 minutes outside town, tucked behind a line of bare trees off a narrow, cracked road. The drive was lonely. By the time I reached the gravel driveway, dusk had already smeared purple across the sky. The house looked like something out of a forgotten postcard. White paint peeling, porch swing creaking softly in the wind, a faint yellow glow leaking from the kitchen window. Before I could knock, the door swung open. Clara stood there, apron tied around her waist, cheeks flushed from the stove's heat. She smiled, stepping forward to kiss me lightly on the cheek. "You made it," she said, breath warm against my skin. Come in, come in." The scent hit me first. Herbs, onions, raw meat, something metallic beneath it. Inside, the house was cluttered but not messy, more preserved. Faded portraits, heavy drapes, clocks of every size ticking out of sync, their uneven rhythm filling the silence. In the kitchen, I froze. On the counter sat several slabs of raw meat, unwrapped, unchilled, slick and glistening in the warm kitchen light. Thick drops ran down the cutting board and pattered softly onto the wooden counter, leaving dark stains that spread like oil. I tried to keep my voice casual, though something about it made my stomach twist. Shouldn't that be in the fridge? Clara glanced over her shoulder and waved a hand dismissively. Doctor's orders. Grandpa's on a special diet, full meat. It's the only thing his body accepts now. Oh, I muttered, forcing a thin smile. Right. The stew on the stove burbled softly, releasing waves of steam that smelled thick, fatty, almost metallic. She stirred it slowly, humming a faint tune under her breath, something old and lilting like a forgotten lullaby. As night settled, the house grew unnervingly still. We sat in the living room, a fire whispering in the hearth, chatting about movies. I tried to focus on her laughter, but my eyes kept wandering toward the dark hallway. At the end stood a half-closed door. Her grandfather's room. She'd told me earlier that he was paralyzed, bedridden, unable to speak, hadn't left his room in years. But I hadn't heard a single sound from behind that door. No coughs, no creaks, not even the faint rhythm of breathing. Around 11, Clara stood and smoothed her apron. "I need to change Grandpa into his nightclothes and give him his medicine," she said softly. "I'll be right back." I nodded, pretending calm, but my nerves prickled as soon as she disappeared down the hall. The silence that followed was heavy, so complete that I could hear my own pulse. Out of boredom, or maybe some reckless curiosity, I stood and wandered. Near the kitchen, I noticed a narrow door half hidden behind a rack of coats. It led down to the basement. The moment I cracked it open, a foul stench hit me, thick, wet, unmistakably rotten. My eyes watered. I covered my mouth with my sleeve and thumbed my phone flashlight on. The wooden stairs groaned beneath each step as I descended. My knees trembled, breath shallow. The beam of light wavered over shelves, jars, dozens of them. Glass jars filled with cloudy fluid, each containing something pale and obscene, a finger, an eye, a strip of flesh curling at the edges like wilted paper. My stomach lurched. Crates stacked high with bones filled the far wall. Hooks dangled from the beams, rusted, still streaked with dark residue. From one hung what looked like a torso. Ribs split wide, organs gone. One arm still wore a gold wedding ring. I doubled over and vomited onto the steps, the acid burning my throat. Footsteps creaked overhead. Then softly, the sound of a door closing. Panic surged through me. I stumbled upward, nearly tripping on the last stair, and slammed the basement door shut. My chest heaved as I stumbled back into the living room just as Clara reappeared, smiling that same gentle, practiced smile. "Everything okay?" she asked, my voice cracked. "Yeah, just..." Stretched my legs. Her eyes lingered on me for a long second, too long, like she could hear my pulse from across the room. Then she smiled again, perfectly calm. "You look tired. Want me to set up the guest room?" My mind screamed at me to run, but my body betrayed me. I nodded. "Yeah, that'd be great." She led me down the dim hallway. As we passed the grandfather's room, I noticed the door slightly ajar. Through the gap, I caught a glimpse of a hospital-style curtain around the bed. The air that drifted out was sour, heavy with decay. On the floor just inside the threshold, plates sat piled high, crusted with scraps, buzzing with flies. I swallowed hard. The guest room was across the hall. She smiled again, her eyes catching the light in a strange way. "I'll grab blankets. Make yourself comfortable." As soon as she disappeared, I slipped across the hall and pushed open the old man's door. The stench hit like a wave, sweet, cloying rot that clung to my tongue. My phone light flickered as I moved closer. The figure in the bed lay perfectly still, hidden behind the curtain. His chest rose and fell in slow, shallow breaths. I turned toward the small window on the far wall. The frame was old, stiff, but wide enough to crawl through. I eased it open inch by inch, the hinges groaning quietly. Then I heard it, a sound behind the curtain. Slow, rasping breathing, wet and uneven. I turned just as the head snapped toward me. The curtain swayed back. Eyes, milky, lifeless, locked on mine. And then the mouth opened. The lips stretched, splitting at the corners. The grin widened impossibly, revealing rows of teeth. Too many, too long, jagged like glass shards. My blood turned to ice. I bolted for the window, scraping my arm open on the jagged frame as I hauled myself through. I hit the ground hard, rolled, and ran. Branches clawed at my face, tearing skin, but I didn't stop until the woods broke into the main road. A truck driver braked hard when he saw me stumbling, bloody and gasping. At the nearest gas station, I called the police. They went to the farmhouse that night. Here's the part that still crawls under my skin. When they arrived, the house was empty. No Clara, no grandfather, no jars, nothing. Property records showed the place had been abandoned for almost 20 years. The last listed owner was Raymond Fletcher, a butcher paralyzed in a farm accident in the late 90s. He died in 2002. There was no record of any Clara Fletcher. No license, no birth certificate. A trace. I deleted every dating app after that. But sometimes when I dream, I'm back in that room, the curtain beginning to pull aside and those dead eyes find me again. The grin stretches wide, teeth glinting in the dark, sharp and endless. And every single time I wake with the smell of raw meat thick in my nose. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to sign up for a dating app. For most of my life, I'd been painfully awkward around people, especially when it came to dating. I wasn't the type to approach strangers in coffee shops or strike up conversations at bars. Honestly, I didn't even go to bars much. After my last relationship ended a little over a year ago, I sort of disappeared into myself. Long nights of Netflix, endless overtime, video games, and quiet dinners for one. I told myself I didn't need anyone. That solitude was safer, but loneliness has a way of sneaking in through the cracks, usually when you think you've sealed them for good. My best friend, Tasha, had been on my case for months. "Liv, come on," she said one night from her couch, our half-eaten pizza sagging on a greasy box between us. "You can't just sit in your apartment forever. Try something new. Everyone's on dating apps now." I groaned, slumping back. "You know me. I'm terrible at small talk." I freeze up. "I'll look like a total idiot," she smirked, licking sauce from her thumb. "You'll be fine. It's not like you're meeting them face to face. You just text. You're great at texting." I rolled my eyes but couldn't argue. Texting was safer. You could edit yourself, hide the awkward pauses, sound clever when you had time to think. Real life didn't offer that luxury. That night, against my better judgment, I downloaded OkCid. I told myself it was just curiosity, just to see who was out there. Worst case, I'd waste an hour or two. Best case, maybe I'd find someone decent to talk to. After a week of half-hearted swiping, I matched with a guy named Ethan Rivers. His profile stood out not because it was trying too hard, but because it wasn't. He described himself as a freelance graphic designer who loved cooking, horror movies, and hiking. His photos were simple, one at a farmer's market, one sketching in a notebook, another of him smiling awkwardly beside his dog, a scruffy mutt named Scout. Our conversations flowed easier than I expected. He wasn't pushy like some of the others. He cracked self-deprecating jokes. "I'm 5'7", so don't wear heels unless you want to dunk on me," and actually paid attention to my replies. He didn't just wait for his turn to talk. He asked questions, remembered details. Over the next 2 weeks, we texted constantly. Memes, movie recs, tiny updates from our days. There were moments I caught myself smiling at my phone like an idiot. Then one Friday night, he asked if I wanted to meet in person. "I know this is cliché," he texted, "but I make a mean pasta. Come over and I'll cook for you. We can watch some indie horror movies. Promise it won't be boring." My first instinct was to say no. Every safety article screamed meet in public first, but then I hesitated. He seemed different, kind, grounded, and at 6'2" I towered over him. I figured if anything felt off, I could handle myself. Still, I texted Tasha. "Girl, you are not going to some dude's apartment for your first date," she replied immediately. "I know," I typed back. "But he seems different. He cooks, remember? And I'm not exactly fragile." "Different is what every girl says before she ends up on Dateline," she shot back. We argued back and forth until I finally promised her a safety plan. I gave her his full name, his address, and we agreed on a code word, pineapple. If I texted it, she'd call with an emergency excuse for me to leave. The night of the date, I stood outside Ethan's apartment building in Portland, my stomach in knots. The place was small but well kept. Brick exterior, ivy climbing the side, a warm yellow light glowing through his window. I texted Tasha, "Here, I'll update if things get weird." "Don't die," she replied, followed by a knife emoji. I laughed quietly and knocked. Ethan opened the door almost immediately, smiling. "Liv, hey, wow, you're taller than I pictured." "Guess I didn't lie on my profile," I said, forcing a laugh. He stepped aside, ushering me in. His apartment smelled faintly of sandalwood incense and something deeper. Old books, maybe. Canvases leaned against the walls, sketchpads scattered across the coffee table. It was cluttered but intentional, creative. Not dirty, just lived in. "Want the tour?" he asked. "Sure." He showed me around. A cozy living room, a cramped kitchen, and finally his bedroom. He lingered there just a second too long, his grin crooked. This is the bed I told you about, king size. Plenty of room for tall people. I forced a chuckle. Good to know. We moved on quickly and I expected him to start cooking, but instead he grabbed a bottle of wine from the counter and presented it with a mock flourish. Ta-da. Red imported, cost me $100. You're gonna love it. Oh, nice, I said, smiling politely. But something about that made me frown inside. It wasn't the bragging. It was the way he said it, like a magician introducing a trick he couldn't wait to see unfold. So, what's for dinner? I asked, trying to sound light. Ethan hesitated, then shrugged. Didn't really get around to buying groceries. Figured wine would be enough for the vibe, you know? I gave a nervous laugh. You said pasta. Yeah, but wine's more romantic, right? He said, grinning like it was a clever joke. My stomach growled in response. I hadn't eaten all day, assuming he'd cook. He must have noticed because he quickly added, I've got chips and bread. We can snack. Not exactly the romantic dinner I'd pictured, but I didn't want to seem ungrateful. We poured wine, ate stale chips, and made awkward small talk. Still, I couldn't ignore the way he kept refilling my glass every time I took a sip. Whoa, slow down, I said after the third top-off, half laughing. Come on, loosen up, he teased. This is the good stuff. Don't waste it. I forced a smile, though unease had started to crawl under my skin. Something about his insistence, the way his eyes flicked from my glass to my mouth, made my chest tighten. After the bottle was empty, he dimmed the lights and turned to his shelf. Movie time, he said. I expected some quiet indie horror or maybe a cult classic. Instead, he pulled out a scratched DVD case, a Serbian film. My stomach dropped. Seriously? I asked. That movie's not really my thing. That's because you don't get it, he said smugly, sliding it into the player. It's not just shock value, it's art, social commentary. You'll see. I've seen it, I said, firmer this time.
Not interested in watching it again. He waved a hand dismissively.
You didn't really see it. You probably just looked away. Watch it with me, I'll explain it. Against my better judgment, I stayed. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe I didn't want to make a scene in a stranger's apartment, so I sat there, tense, pretending to watch as he hit play. Half an hour in, the film reached one of its most disturbing scenes. I tried to distract myself, picking up my phone and sending Tasha a casual text. Still alive. Just watching a movie, Ethan noticed immediately. Who are you texting? He asked, his tone sharp. My friend, I said, keeping my voice even. Just letting her know I'll be late. He relaxed a little, leaning back. Good. Don't want any distractions. The room went silent except for the TV. Then came that awful scene. Ethan didn't speak. He just breathed, heavy, ragged through his nose. I glanced sideways. His eyes were fixed on the screen, wide, unblinking. His lips were parted slightly. You good? I asked carefully. He didn't answer, just made a low sound, almost a groan. Then without warning, he scooted closer until our hips touched. His hand slid onto my thigh. I jerked back. What are you doing? Why not? He whispered, my skin crawled. I should go, I said, grabbing my purse and standing up. Wait, he snapped, his voice sharp and full of irritation. But I didn't stop. My pulse thundered in my ears as I bolted for the door. The hallway outside was dark, and the moment the latch clicked behind me, a high-pitched animal-like screech erupted from inside the apartment. I froze. For one horrifying second, I thought he'd locked the door, or that he was coming for me. My fingers trembled as I fought with the knob. Finally wrenching it open, I ran, down the narrow stairwell out into the street, heart hammering. The sound of that screech seemed to chase me, echoing faintly behind me. I called Tasha as soon as I hit the sidewalk. Get here now, please, I stammered, my voice shaking. She pulled up 5 minutes later. The second I climbed into her car, I broke. Tears came fast, uncontrollable. On the ride home, I told her everything. The fake dinner, the constant refills, the movie, the way he touched me during that scene. Tasha's face went pale. Liv, that's seriously messed up. I'm so sorry I wasn't closer. It's not your fault, I whispered, staring out the window. But I don't think that guy's just awkward. There's something really wrong with him. The next day I blocked his number. It didn't feel like enough. I replayed everything in my head until I finally called the police. Not to file a report, but as a warning. The officer on the phone sounded tired but kind. You're right, he said. None of this is technically illegal, but we'll note his name. If something else happens, we'll know where to start. It wasn't justice, but it was something. A small measure of control after a night that stripped it away. I didn't date again for years. And when I finally did, I made one rule: public places only, no exceptions. Because what I learned that night was this: it's not the obvious red flags that destroy you, it's the ones that smile, pour your wine, and only show themselves when you're already sitting in the dark beside them, realizing too late that you're not with someone awkward, you're with someone dangerous. I never imagined I'd be the kind of man to try online dating. For most of my life, I hadn't needed to. I married young, right after college, to a woman I believed I'd grow old with. Her name was Rachel, and she was everything that anchored me: my partner, my compass, my best friend. We built a small, quiet life together just outside Springfield, Missouri. I worked for a local logistics company. She taught elementary school. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, warm hours. I used to think that kind of peace lasted forever, until the night it was stolen from me. Rachel was killed by a drunk driver in the fall of 2005. She'd been driving home after grading papers at her favorite coffee shop. The man who hit her was twice her size and 3 times over the legal limit. She died instantly. I still remember the call, 11:48 p.m. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen lighting the dark. I answered half asleep, my voice thick, unaware that the sound on the other end would shatter the rest of my life. The years after that were a blur of silence and survival. I didn't just lose my wife, I lost the person I was with her. My house became a tomb. I'd spend whole nights staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator because it was the only sound that proved the world still existed. Friends stopped calling after a while. I stopped answering long before that. People told me to move on, to let time do its work. But how do you move on when every breath of your home still smells faintly of her shampoo? When you walk past her favorite bookstore and still hear her laugh, I couldn't even bring myself to wash her coffee mug. It stayed on the counter for 2 years like a shrine. For a long time, I believed I'd stay alone. Grief hardens into habit after a while. But grief also morphs, it dulls, softens, waits. 7 years later, that waiting turned into something unbearable. I'd watch my friends hold their kids, hear them talk about anniversaries, and go home to an empty house that echoed whenever I opened the door. That's when I did the thing I swore I never would. Online dating. It was the early 2000s, still awkward, still whispered about in break rooms and family dinners. After a week of debating, I chose Match.com. It seemed safe enough. One night, with my hands trembling like I was doing something forbidden, I sat at my old desktop computer and made a profile. Name: Daniel. Age: 41. Status: widowed. No kids. Never remarried. I uploaded a few photos, one from a cousin's barbecue where I actually smiled, one from a fishing trip, and another from a company dinner. Nothing impressive, just enough to prove I was real and hopefully not terrifying. Then somehow, someone messaged me. Her name was Samantha, 38, lived in Fairview, a town maybe 20 minutes away. Worked in retail? Her profile was short: book lover, dog owner, coffee addict. Her photo showed a brunette with kind, almost shy eyes and a smile that wasn't perfect but genuine. At first, I didn't expect much, but our chats turned easy, natural. She asked about my favorite movies, what kind of work I did, and eventually, hesitantly, about Rachel. I didn't want to go there, but something in her tone felt sincere, so I told her. When I finished typing, she responded, "I'm so sorry, Daniel. I lost someone too, an engagement that ended badly." I get it, that hole never really fills, does it? That message sat on my screen for a long time. Somehow it made me trust her. Weeks passed. Our conversations stretched late into the night, growing warmer, more familiar. I found myself smiling at my phone, something I hadn't done in years. It felt strange, wrong even, like betraying Rachel, but it also felt alive. One night, after pacing around my living room for 20 minutes, I finally typed, "Would you like to meet in person? Maybe grab a drink at Johnson's Tavern? It's quiet, nothing fancy." Her reply came almost instantly. "I'd love that, Daniel. I think it's time we met." My heart kicked hard against my ribs. Nearly 10 years since my last date, and suddenly I was back to being a nervous kid again, checking my reflection, overthinking every word. The next evening, I shaved, ironed a shirt I hadn't worn in years, cleaned out my car, and tried to ignore the knot in my chest. Johnson's Tavern was only 5 minutes away, a rustic, wood-paneled bar where the regulars knew your name and the jukebox never stopped playing old country songs. When I stepped inside, laughter rolled through the air. The smell of fried food and beer clung thick as the sound of pool balls cracked in the back. It was warm, familiar, grounding. I found a small table near the back, away from the noise, ordered a soda to steady my nerves, and pulled out my phone. "Here," I typed to Samantha. "Take your time. I'll be waiting." "Hey, I'm here." "Just grabbed a table," she replied. "Running late, caught in some traffic. Be there in 10. I exhaled, trying to calm the restless pulse in my throat. That's when Gabrielle, the bartender, sauntered over. "Damn, Mr. Daniels," she teased, her grin wide. "You're dressed sharp tonight. Big date or something?" I laughed, but it came out shaky. "Something like that, Gabby." She was only 19, home from college for the summer, owner's daughter, small-town curious in that way where she seemed to know everyone's secrets before they did. If you wanted gossip, you went to Gabby. She could find out where someone was born, what they drove, and who they were sleeping with, all before your drink hit the counter. "Let me see," she said, eyebrows raised with playful suspicion. "Got a picture?" I hesitated, then sighed and handed her my phone. She glanced at the photo of Samantha. For a second, barely a second, her expression changed. The grin softened, faltered. Her eyes flickered with something unreadable. "Huh," she murmured under her breath. "What?" I asked, a nervous laugh catching in my throat. "Nothing," she said quickly, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "She's pretty. You're lucky." Then she turned and walked away. Gabby never just walked away. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was overthinking, but something in my gut wouldn't settle. The clock above the bar ticked louder than it should have. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Almost there. Just a couple more minutes. That's when I noticed Gabby again, whispering with 2 older men at the bar. I recognized them. Local truckers, regulars. They kept glancing toward me, their faces tight, serious. The mood of the room shifted, subtle but sharp. Conversations dimmed. Someone turned the jukebox volume down. When Gabby came back, her hands were trembling slightly as she set my drink down. "Can I see that picture again?" she asked softly. "Sure," I said, unlocking my phone, heart starting to race. She stared at the screen longer this time. Then she leaned in, her voice low enough for only me to hear. "Daniel, that's not Samantha." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Her throat bobbed. "That's a man. His real name's Charles. He got out of prison 6 months ago." The words hit like a fist. What are you talking about?" Gabby glanced around, making sure no one else was listening. "He's known around here. He pretends to be women online, sets up dates with lonely guys. He's been caught breaking into their houses afterward. Stealing, stalking, fraud, burglary, you name it. He only got out early because his family pulled strings." I blinked hard, shaking my head. "No, that's Gabby, that can't—" "Daniel," she cut in sharply, eyes wide with urgency. "I called the police. They're on their way, but you need to act normal until they get here, okay?" "Normal?" My pulse thundered. He knows where I live." I told him about Rachel. God, I told him everything. Before she could answer, my phone buzzed again. "Parking now. See you in a sec." Gabby's face went pale. She whispered, "One of the truckers is going to keep an eye on you. Don't freak out. Just stay calm." The bar door creaked open, and there she was. The person I knew as Samantha stepped inside, wearing the same warm smile from her profile picture. For one surreal moment, no one moved. The entire bar went still, the air thick enough to choke on. I raised a trembling hand in a half wave, forcing a hollow smile as every muscle in my body screamed. My fists tightened under the table. Gabby approached the newcomer, her voice steady but clipped. "Evening. Need a table?" "Oh no," Samantha said in a high, lilting voice. "I see my date already." At that exact moment, red and blue lights flashed against the tavern's wooden walls. 2 county sheriff cruisers pulled up outside. The smile on Samantha's face faltered. Then, panic. He spun on his heel, bolting for the exit. He didn't make it. One of the deputies met him at the door, slamming him down hard onto the wooden floor. Chairs scraped back, someone gasped. The high-pitched voice cracked as he shrieked, "This is a mistake! I'm a woman! I'm a woman!" But the deputies weren't listening. They cuffed him fast, read him his rights, and dragged him outside. The bar stayed silent except for the sound of his shouts fading into the night. I sat there frozen, my drink untouched, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Rage and humiliation twisted together until I couldn't tell one from the other. Gabby touched my arm gently. "You okay?" I laughed once bitterly. "No," I said. "Not even close." That night I drove home without the radio on, the glow of the dashboard lights blurring through my tears. When I got inside, Rachel's photo was waiting on my dresser, her smile steady, untouched by time. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at it until the sun began to rise. All I'd wanted was connection, a little warmth in a cold house. But what I found was a reminder that monsters don't always hide in the dark anymore. They hide behind screens, behind smiles, behind kind words typed on glowing phones. From that day forward, I swore off online dating for good. I'd rather live with loneliness than ever again invite that kind of evil into my life. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd actually end up on a dating app. I used to laugh when people said they met online. It sounded pathetic back in high school, like confessing you couldn't make a real human connection. But 2 years into college, I wasn't laughing anymore. I was 20, buried under civil engineering at Lakewood University, and honestly, I was worn down to the bone. I had friends, guys I studied with, people to grab pizza with, but when it came to dating, it felt like I was watching life through glass. Every time I opened Instagram, I'd see couples I knew, arms wrapped around each other, city lights behind them, greasy diner selfies at 2 a.m., even dumb study photos captioned with inside jokes. Meanwhile, I was always the one walking home alone from the library at ungodly hours, earbuds in, pretending the silence didn't feel like a weight pressing on my ribs, but it did. It crept in, quiet but heavy, until one Friday night it finally cracked open. A friend invited me over to hang out, just movies, food, something easy. When I got there, one of the guys was sitting way too close to a girl I didn't recognize. They weren't even official, but the air around them shimmered with that unspoken tension. The way their knees brushed, how they leaned in close, whispering and laughing like the rest of us didn't exist. I left early. Back in my dorm, I sat in the dark while my laptop fan whirred and the mini fridge hummed like background noise to my own emptiness. That's when I finally admitted it. I was tired of being alone. That night, I downloaded Plenty of Fish. Making a profile felt humiliating. What the hell do you even say about yourself without sounding like a complete idiot? I threw together something half serious. Liked horror movies, video games, hiking when I wasn't buried in calculus, and coffee. Always coffee. Then I uploaded a few pictures. One at the gym, one from a trip home, one with my dog. I hovered over publish, heart pounding, then tapped it anyway. Loneliness makes you reckless. The first week was rough. A few matches appeared, but most vanished without replying. The ones who did texted like bots, their words flat and hollow. Each night I scrolled through faces that blurred together, confidence draining by the minute. I almost deleted the damn app. Then one night while cramming for a midterm, my phone buzzed. New message from Allison. Her profile picture stopped me cold. Long brown hair, dark eyes, a faint smile that looked reluctant, like she hated taking photos but tried anyway. Her bio was short, introvert, gamer, sarcastic but nice, looking for someone who gets me. Her message read, "So you're actually kind of cute." Didn't expect that on here. My chest tightened, stupidly excited. I typed fast, "Me? I'll take that as a compliment." Allison, most guys on here are super creepy. You look normal. That's rare. Me, trust me, I had the same fear about girls on here. Allison, fair. So what's your deal? You look busy. We talked for 2 hours about professors we both hated, games we played, how cafeteria food should qualify as cruel and unusual punishment. She was quick, funny, real. For the first time since downloading that cursed app, I felt like maybe this could actually lead somewhere. Over the next few days, we messaged constantly. She said she lived off campus, 19, a freshman majoring in English. We joked about our lives, her drowning in essays, me suffocating in equations. Sometimes while studying, my phone would buzz. "Allison, stop working and talk to me. I'm bored. If I fail this midterm, I'm blaming you." "Allison, worth it." It felt easy, natural, like breathing. Then, about a week in, the tone shifted. One night, she got flirtier. It started as jokes about my gym photo, then, "Allison, truth or dare?" It was childish but fun. "Truth, what's your worst class?" "Dare, send a picture of your messy desk." It went on until the dares got bolder. When she told me to take off my shirt and send a picture, I laughed nervously but did it anyway. She sent one back wearing just a tank top, and it kept going. Step by step, line by line, until I crossed one I swore I never would. I sent her a nude. She sent something too, though thinking back, I'm not sure it was even her. At the time, I went to bed grinning like an idiot. For once, someone actually wanted me. The next morning, silence. No texts, no replies. Not that afternoon either. By evening, the unease had started to crawl under my skin. She'd never gone more than a few hours without responding. Maybe she was busy, I told myself. Homework, friends, anything. But as midnight came and my phone stayed dark, dread pooled in my gut. The following day, while I was reviewing notes, my phone rang. Allison, she had never called before. I answered instantly. "Hey, Allison." Silence. Then a man's voice, deep, cold, trembling with anger. "What the hell are pictures of you doing on my 15-year-old daughter's phone?" My blood went to ice. "What? Who is this?" I stammered. You heard me?" The voice growled, low and shaking with fury. "You've been sending nudes to a child. Do you understand how serious this is? Do you have any idea what kind of sick freak that makes you?" Blood roared in my ears. The room tilted. My vision tunneled. "I didn't know," I blurted out. "Her profile said she was 19. She told me she went to my university. I swear I didn't know." "You're a liar," he snapped. "And now you're going to pay for what you've done. Unless you want the police at your door in the next hour, you'll send me $11,000 to make this go away." My lungs seized. I couldn't catch a full breath. His voice was too calm, too deliberate, like someone who'd done this before. "You've ruined your life, son," he said almost coldly, "sending sexual photos to a minor. You know what that makes you? A pedophile. The cops don't play games with people like you. I should be calling them right now." My throat felt raw, my hands slick with sweat. "I swear to God I didn't know," I pleaded, voice cracking. "She told me she was 19. Her profile said she was in college. Please, you have to believe me." A pause. I could hear his breathing, slow, heavy, controlled. Then, "You think the police care about your excuses? You think a judge is going to pat you on the head and say, 'Oh, he didn't know'? No, you'll be branded for life, prison, registering as a sex offender. Goodbye to your future." My heart slammed so violently I thought I'd faint. "Please," I whispered, "please don't do this to me." "I didn't know." Another pause. Then his tone changed, less rage, more calculation. "Maybe there's another way. Maybe I don't need to involve the police. Maybe I can keep this between us." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "You're going to compensate me for the trauma you caused my daughter," he said coldly. $11,000. That's the cost of therapy. That's the cost of me keeping my mouth shut. 11,000. My chest tightened. I barely had 700 to my name. Money I'd saved for a used car. "I don't have that," I said quickly. "I'm just a student, please." "Then figure it out," he barked. "Call your parents, borrow, sell your computer, your phone, I don't care. You have 2 hours. If I don't hear from you, I'm walking into the police station." The line went dead. I sat there frozen, staring at my phone like it might explode. For a long moment, I couldn't even move. My pulse hammered in my throat. My stomach knotted so tight I thought I'd throw up. The next 2 hours blurred together. I called my parents, hands shaking, voice breaking as I tried to explain. At first, they didn't believe me. Or worse, they thought I had done something unforgivable. My dad's voice exploded through the phone. "What the hell were you thinking? Sending nudes? Jesus Christ, are you insane?" "I didn't know," I kept saying. "She told me she was 19, Dad, please." "I didn't know." Then my mom got on, her tone softer but full of dread. "Honey, are you sure this is real? It could be a scam. People fake things like this all the time." "It didn't feel fake," I whispered. My whole body was trembling. He knew my name. He knew my school. He sounded serious. My dad cursed under his breath, then quieter, resigned. How much money do you have? 700. He exhaled, long and angry. All right, I'll cover the rest. His voice was still hard, but beneath it I could hear fear. Not for himself, for me. We wired the money. My parents sent the rest. Then we waited. For the next several hours I sat in my dorm room, staring at the door, every sound outside making my pulse spike. When my phone finally buzzed, I nearly dropped it. A text from Allison's number. Unknown, we got the money. Good choice. Enjoy your life. Don't ever contact this number again. Then, silence. The next day, the number was disconnected. For weeks after, I lived in paranoia. Every knock at the door made my chest seize. Every time a campus security car drove by, I thought it was for me. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. My grades tanked. My parents kept telling me it was a scam. Think about it, my mom said. Real cops don't let you pay them off. They show up. That guy preyed on your fear. It was blackmail, plain and simple. My dad was less gentle. This better be the last time you ever pull something this stupid. You got lucky. If it wasn't a scam, you'd be finished. No second chances. You hear me? I heard him. But I still don't know the truth. Part of me believes my parents that it was just a trap, an elaborate setup designed to squeeze desperate guys like me. The fake profile, the sudden escalation, the demand for money, it all fits. But the other part, can't let it go. What if Allison wasn't fake? What if there really was a father on the other end of that line? What if I crossed that line without even realizing it? That's what keeps me up at night. Not guilt, but uncertainty. The not knowing. All I know is this. I never touched a dating app again. And if anyone ever asks me about meeting people online, I tell them the truth. Be careful. Because one mistake, even one you never meant to make, can destroy your life in a heartbeat.